Absolutely that, and these are the last chance qualifiers. So as we've mentioned before, we've had the group stage, we've been through that, so some teams have automatically qualified to the playoffs based on those standings, but now is the time to make it into playoffs if you haven't managed to do so already.
And for some of these teams that we've got coming at you today, you might recognise faces if you have been paying diligent attention to all of our UEM action, as we have got a couple returning ones. We'll talk about them in a little bit time, but where do you want to hit on first? Because we got a lot to go through.
Exactly that. Before we get into any of the teams and the matches for today, we're going to bring us to the prize pool for the entire tournament, which is a grand total of 14,500 euros.
This graphic gets me every time, whenever it just pops up on the screen, and it just makes me think, damn, what are Kit going to do when they spend the money this time around?
That is a good point. They've been the reigning champions for some time now, and we'll see whether somebody can put an end to their reign and how it might be one of the teams coming in through these last chance qualifiers.
As we have got a lot of them currently looking for those last 4 spots in the playoffs. To just put a bit of context behind that joke that I threw out there, Kit SC White won the last 2 tournaments, not dropping a single game in one of them. So, competition is high. They are currently in the tournament again, haven't dropped a game yet. They won't be taking part in the last chance qualifier, as you might infer from that. But a lot of these teams are looking to fight their way back for another chance at it.
Exactly, Kit is kind of the raid boss almost, but we're going to bring it to the roadmap to see at which point they might be defeated, because right now we have the last chance qualifiers of today and tomorrow, and then the playoffs will begin starting from next week on the 21st of May.
So we've got today and tomorrow pretty much a speed run of our little double bracket last chance qualifier. Like I said, the top 4 teams are going to be the ones joining those dominant ones up in the playoffs that will be taking part for the rest of the tournament, leading into those finals that I am really excited for, because one way we get to see a team challenge Kit, another way we get a completely fresh finals. Both amazing results.
Exactly that. One down. I mean, I guess they both will win the narrative. You know, University Esports Masters bringing the best of what Europe has to offer, and here they are for the last chance qualifiers. We have a few teams from a variety of different countries. Roma Bruder from Germany, User Pessigol coming back from the groups, likewise with BME, a bit cool from France, then H2B from Belgium, then Yeno Mesla, TUD Apes Primal, UPC Apples, AZSAGH, again coming in from groups, if I'm not mistaken, 02, Stuba, DSA, KTU, and finally DMU T1.
And for the teams we're guaranteed going to be bringing you today, we have got a couple of the ones on your screen. I'm particularly excited to see what we're going to get from some of those ones that we expected fancy things from. As you can see, we have got right now BME versus DMU T1 kicking off with the first one, BME returning from our initial group stage, and then DMU making their way in as the UK representatives. And now, that's what we got coming up first, followed by Pessigod taking on one of 2 teams. We'll have to see based on who actually wins in those matchups.
Yeah, there's a lot of underlying best of 3s that are going on behind the scenes. We are only broadcasting the upper bracket here, so every single match in this sort of is mattering when it comes to who is going to end up getting the qualification. Here is the bracket for all of you at home watching, and as you can see there, we have the DMU BME there in the first part of the upper bracket, and so on and so forth.
So we will be taking a bit of a skim here, there, and everywhere, getting a rough idea of the power of both sides of the bracket, which is going to be good, as we know that the bottom side, at least with our first matchup and the second one, will be really indicative to see what we're actually expecting from these last chance qualifier teams, especially as I think now we can start to talk a little bit more about the teams that we have seen before. A lot of heavy improvements from BME Hungary. We're looking to see what they can actually do differently. This team had a very mixed performance in the group stage. They finished out in 3rd place, joint with 0-2 in Group A. So I'm looking at this team to think, how are they going to become a bit more consistent?
That is the question to be answered, and we'll see it in the best of 3 today. But what is worth saying is, yes, BME came 3rd, but given their performance within the group stage, they kind of dropped some games where you would expect them to not drop. And if they did actually perform consistently in those games, then we would have seen them make the tiebreaker for 2nd.
And that is the thing, we are currently in a best of 3 with them against DMU, and my eyes are squarely on the mid jungle of Sora and Hunty. These two players have shown high highs and just lukewarm performances. In the first game we saw of this team on stream, Hunty got their signature Sejuani, got a level 1 invade off with the team, Sora popped off on the Tristana, and it was the most devastating performance of the tournament, hands down. However, after that we saw them repeat against the same team, 0-2, get the same mid matchup of Tristana into Orianna, and just do nothing. It was just absurd watching this team go from complete heroes to zeros, and I want to see that the first game form. I want to see them being proactive, and that comes off of Hunty getting facilitating champions.
Exactly. It seems that whatever Hunty's on, the team kind of revolves around. But we're going to pan it to the other side of this matchup, which will be the DMU Team 1 coming from the UK. Now, DMU have had a bit of a shaky road to making it into LCQs, but I would say that they have developed coming from that.
They've definitely had a lot of time to get practiced playing in both the NUL and the NSE for the UK League, and getting damn far in both of them, second place for the NUL and winning the NSE, moving on to qualify. They played a lot of best of series is the point I'm trying to make, so they should be coming in at least with a bit more of that hard and fast experience on more recent patches, because a reminder for everybody, we're on patch 12.8, the MSI patch, not live.
Yeah, so none of that Olaf, none of that Talia, and none of that Pike shenanigans going on, but instead we'll have the same thing that MSI have had, as Melvin Isle has mentioned, so the Swain is available, the Umbral Glaive stuff is available, and so forth.
For Umbral Glaive and a little bit of Pike, one of the things I want to point out is that we have seen some abstract stuff from DMU. In their first game of the NSE finals, they pulled out Taric Pike bot lane with Karthus mid. Now, Pike with Umbral Glaive is at a very good spot right now, especially pre-nerf. Karthus got buffed, I believe it was 2 patches ago, and then across the board, this squad actually looks very, very similar to that of BME. Both top laners usually left on an island, Coco for BME and then Spirit for DMU. Spirit normally takes a more of a tank role for the squad, whereas Coco has been going a lot of these independent champions like the Gwen, who can exist and really thrive if they're not being camped. Whereas mid-jungle, for DMU, Hope and Samjay, exact same story as Hunty Sora. They have pivoted the style of this whole team to be Snowball, Samjay and Hope as much as possible so they can protect their side laners.
And this is exactly what we're going to be watching out for in draft in time to come, and in the applications within the best of 3, is to see how both teams interact with this mid jungle and see how they want to draft it, how they want it to play around the rest of their team, because it's going to be crucial to the success of both sides.
As far as it goes, I'm not coming into this game with a particular favourite, especially because you haven't seen the form necessarily on this particular patch. It's always that kind of up in the air of, well, depending on how much BME wanted to do research, DMU have got a lot of recent VODs that you can go back and watch. I was having more than enough time. I could have been doing it for a day and a half if I wanted to. That's how many they've got just sat around at the moment. So there is a lot of footage that BME could take some very important information from, because when I was saying BME aren't the most consistent team, DMU definitely aren't setting themselves in stone there.
Yeah, neither teams have had a really solid, say, progression in terms of, oh, well, you know what, this is exactly what I'm going to bring to the game each time, and I'm going to perform to roughly the same level. There have been highs and lows, and that has been noticeable.
And that means that for me, my prediction is going to be 3 games. Don't know which way it's going yet, we'll need to see that based on the form of the players, but one of the champions that I think might actually show up, that's kind of been on the fringes of the meta, is Xerath. 3 players, I think I put up 4 fingers there, play Xerath in this game. We've got Sora for the mid lane of BME, and then the mid and support players for DMU, so it actually becomes a bit of a flex pick that could get a touch dangerous in the draft, especially if you have already built a very solid force to play around in the ADC and the jungle roles for DMU.
Yeah, and this is the sort of things that we'll likely see trying to be targeted. Something that is worth noting for BME as well is that, yes, we've been talking about these picks in particular, but as far as what I've seen from BME, and something that the team really likes to pride themselves on, is the fact that they're actually really versatile in draft,
Yeah.
being able to support a variety of different champions. So yes, these are champions they might be better at or prefer, but that is by no means the only thing they're capable of playing.
You know, in Mario Kart, where you can race against your own ghost?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I'm feeling talking about both of these teams, because I have to mirror the exact same strengths for DMU. This team literally played Tarek Pipe bot lane and won the game. Admittedly, they got stomped in lane, not the point. But we have to look at the versatility of both of these squads. They will lock in whatever champion they feel is optimal, which means we should probably look a bit towards what the MSI meta has been to maybe get a bit of a picture of that. Wukong, recent rework into the jungle, very strong there and in the top lane, has had a bit of a mixed performance, but overall, it's very, very good. They can jump over walls now. It's a very important thing for a jungler to be able to get that map mobility. Other reworks we've got, Rengar up in the top lane.
Yes.
Another significant one that can be played in jungle, but go on, you can take it away for that one.
I mean, if you really want to bring it to Rengar, there have been inklings of the Ivern Rengar synergy in whichever permutation it might be, being able to utilize those bushes more, and even in some cases being able to use Senna's own mist to provide that invisibility as a jump as well. And we have seen a bit of resurgence with Senna recently in combination with something like the Wukong, for example.
And it gives me a bit of hope because one of the players of DMU goes by that name, Hope. Another name, I knew them as prior, was True Invis, and they bring some assassins to the table in the form of the Evelyn Kha'Zix as well in their recent finals. Maybe they've added Rengar to that repertoire as well. It would make sense with some of the styles that they have been coveted to play so well. I'm hoping we get to see it because this Rengar pick, something that just hasn't really shown its face in comp. For obvious reason, they are very feast or famine, but if you are very good at them and you could show that proficiency off in a game, especially in what we expect to be a bloody battle both sides, then I imagine that you can really leave your mark on this series.
No, we keep going back to this mid-jungle, but it really is the pivotal element between this matchup. If we look at Hunty, Sejuani, Lee Sin, Trundle, Hecarim, these are very enabling junglers, and if we take a look at Rengar and what Rengar wants to do, maybe it is Hunty's job here to, let's say, take True Invis, or Hope in this case, more on, like straight on, in the sense that, okay, I'm going to go and counter gank, I'm going to try and match you with these proactive junglers.
Because when we're looking at some of the potential weaknesses, at least for DMU, it's when that mid jungle doesn't get ahead anymore. Now they pivoted the style to be focused around those two players. If they aren't ahead, and we saw it happen in the third game of their regional finals for the NSE, where they went for a level 1 invade, and the Anivia Hecarim on the enemy team was there to counter, and they got double killed in mid-jungle, and the game was just over from there. There wasn't really much coming back. It was still a competitive game, but when you're starting off with that card deficit, it means that it's just nigh impossible to come back from. So it makes me wonder what kind of style and how aggressive both of these teams are going to try and push the bucket in the early game, because you do not want to be the first one to make a mistake, especially when you have not only one, but potentially 3 games to play against the same opposition.
But at the same time, you can't argue that in a best-of-3 format, let's say you go all in on aggression game 1, just to sort of get an idea of what your opponents are and how they want to do things. Maybe you can go for that. Maybe you can just go full balls to the wall and see how it goes, and then make the adjustment in game 2.
You have the window to do so. Would I recommend it? Hard to say. Depends how confident you're feeling. It is first thing on a Saturday, so I'm curious how awake all of these players are going to be and how readily they are going to be to make those hyperactive moves early. Maybe you can take advantage of the fact that this is the first game of the day for presumably all these players. They might have got up a bit early and had some practice normals or rank games, whatever. But you have to remember that everybody is going to be coming into this one still relatively fresh-faced.
Absolutely, that. It is early on in the day, and stuff like mental, how warmed up you are, this all matters. But as we see the best-of-3 progress, definitely for the second match coming in today, I'm sure that'll become less and less of a factor.
So, we've pretty much run it across the board, both of these teams. Talked about the important areas we will be looking out for is that mid-jungle matchup on both sides. Top lane is going to be likely an island. That just leaves the bottom lane. And the 2 players whose name we have not mentioned yet for BME are Shruki and Kiko. These 2 are pretty much the same as what I said about Coco, where they exist on their own little island in the bot lane. It's a bit harder to ignore that one, though. You really do need to be looking around for that dragon priority. So it's, I think, the secondary carry mechanism for BME, where if they're doing well, bot lane is fine. They're fine to just sit on an island and exist. They don't need to snowball ahead. They have that capability with a bit of help. But when you're looking across the board at Soxu and Didol, who we know will play whatever on earth they think is actually good, not necessarily normal champions, let's go with it in that polite way of saying it, it means that you've got a real bit of work cut out for you. What kind of safe champions are we going to look for? Potentially things like an early pick towards the Ezreal for Shruki to almost just enable their support to go off, do whatever you want. I'm just going to survive because this bot lane can go one of many, many ways, and there's no physical chance we can read it after just looking at match histories.
What is worth saying about Shruki and Kiko, yes, they might be thrown off by what Sosu and Dido might be able to bring here, but Shruki is very proficient on these sorts of safe champions, like you say, the Ezreal, and also the Xayah in particular. Yes, the lethality build has been nerfed, but crit is still in a very good spot right now. And one thing is, Shruki and Kiko have kind of been the consistent factors in a more inconsistent overall team. The bot lane has always kind of been there to do their thing, and they've managed to do that each game.
Completely agree with you on that one. So, 12.8. Not many other significant changes to this point other than those three main reworks we talked about earlier. You have Swain as well that is kind of lurking off onto the side. Not sure whether that's going to be picked. Who knows? We'll see. They've kind of been a bit up in the air. They looked very strong for a few days, and then everybody just stopped practicing it as far as I can tell. And then for those significant nerfs, you talked about the Xayah. We've also got Jinx and the AP Kai'Sa variant also nerfed down to size. So that means that this bottom lane pool is wide open. We could potentially see the Soxu Twitch come out, their signature champion. On the other side, we know the fact that Shruki plays things like Veigar, so maybe we just completely ditch ADCs as a dead role. And now it just adds more and more questions. There's so much on the table that just can't be answered and can't be set up for, so we really do just need to put that laser focus on this first draft to see where these teams put their priorities.
Exactly that, and something that is worth remembering, we had that sort of bubble meta in groups with the Jinx Karma having this ridiculous presence and pick rate, and I imagine the same thing will happen when it comes to these LCQs, in that you kind of get bubble metas appearing in terms of, oh, well, you know what, in this best of three or in the entire tournament as a whole, we see a few champions get really prioritized and then other teams keep picking up on it and it keeps going and so on and so forth, and then by playoffs it'll be a completely different thing.
Exactly, and I am curious to see what exactly we are going to be getting, because when it comes to predicting like these early champions and early power picks, I think that another one that kind of just creeps into the picture is the Volibear in the jungle. It's something that we know Hunty really likes and helps them to snowball the game, but on the other side, it's one of the best just fill champions for any mid-jungle duo. No mid laners are really sitting there like, well, I don't want a Volibear. I don't want to get point and click ganked. If you're an assassin, obviously it's great. If you're a control mage, it helps you get your combos off. Anything else in between, it's probably going to be respectable, and it's something that we saw Hope also default to help snowball Samjay. So it's one of those champions that I'm expecting to be banned away. We've seen it pick up quite a bit of presence at MSI, not a massive amount compared to the Wukong, but I think that the utility and the ease of execution on a Volibear is invaluable in a first game of the day.
Absolutely, ease of execution, something that everyone loves to go back to, but it is definitely a factor when it comes to league compositions. Yes, you might have a winning composition, or you might have a composition that wins in the circumstances when you play it correctly, but if you can't play it correctly, then it's kind of a moot point, isn't it?
Exactly, and it was something we saw all the time in groups. There were many drafts where I went into it very confident saying that X team was going to win, and then we got about 20 minutes in, it's like, oh right,
nope.
They just painted a really pretty picture in draft and they can't execute on it, so what's the point? Like, you have all these tools, if you can't utilize them, then you're just going to lose to the better team. And I think that comes to the burden of almost the theory of what you're trying to do, and both of these squads, we've been building them up as they don't have champion pools. They just think whatever is correct for the game. They lock in the optimal champion, or the champion that feels right in that moment, which means a lot of these players aren't necessarily going to be super practiced on whatever they're picking if they're going down these very abstract routes, things that are maybe more of just the niche counters like a Lissandra mid into a LeBlanc, things like that. So it means that there are going to be more windows for potential misplays and really punishing that if you are on comfort.
Yeah, comfort is certainly one element, but when you have a matchup where I think you can say that both these teams are pretty even when it comes to skill. I wouldn't necessarily say one team is dramatically favored in that regard, just by a player diff, because I really don't think there is one. Sometimes in draft, you have to recognize that and say, maybe we can't just check you in a matchup, even if it's comfort. Maybe we need to draft X or Y fallback strategies to say, well, in the case of when it becomes a bit of a stalemate and we go even, we have something in the back that can help us win the game.
And remember, this is the upper bracket, so these teams do have a chance to fall down to the lower bracket if they end up coming in and having a awful performance. And it does mean that for a lot of them, you can almost go in with that overconfidence sometimes, where you can lean one of two ways. If you go towards the comfort, it can be like, well, I played a lot of Xerath, I'm Samjay, I'm going to lock it in regardless of what you pick. I don't think they necessarily will, but it's that kind of thing that you could potentially take advantage of your opponent if they do step over the line, step over the boundary of where they are allowed in this first draft phase, and just win off of that comfort. Simultaneously, you could go the other way, where if you get a bit too hand-wavy with what you actually want to pick and you don't have a coherent comp by the end of it, it just takes a Volibear to seal it all together.
It does take a Volibear, but I mean, from what I've seen off of Volibear, it's just as inconsistent as maybe these two teams might be from current recent performances.
Well,
not insinuating anything.
Not insinuating anything. Okay, fair enough. Well, we don't care about their recent matches, we care about their current matches, the one to go now. How have you really felt? Have you done much playing on the 12.8 patch? We are now live on 12.9, but this today is the only one that matters. Did you get much experience seeing the Wukong, seeing things like that firsthand?
I can't say I have, because I've only just kind of come back into actually playing the game properly with the release of the new Ophalia skin, which I'm very pleased about. So if you see anything from me on activity of League of Legends within maybe the next few days, it will probably be that champion.
Understandable. I don't think we'll necessarily see them today. Not exactly the kind of style that we expect from these bot laners of being the main focal point for the squad. Maybe they'll surprise us. At the end of the day, Aphelios was one of those ADCs that got tagged the least out of what was the power 3 of the Jinx Aphelios Zeri. Admittedly, though, we did have Gale Force nerfed, I believe it was 2 patches ago, having that cooldown bumped up. Yeah. So it means that you are a lot less safe, and when these teams are so scrappy, I don't know if you want to be playing a champion that is hinging on a give or take 1.5 minute plus cooldown to stay alive.
And I will say, this does depend on what composition you're into, but in cases where that Gale Force dash might not be quite as useful, it is always useful, don't get me wrong. What you can do nowadays is you can go Bloodline, which is now giving you 100 health. You can then go Shield Bow, which is now giving you health on a Mythic passive, on top of Overgrowth and Conditioning, which ends up making you surprisingly tanky as an ADC, albeit you kind of lose benefits of cut down, so generally you're going either Last Stand or Coup de Grace in these circumstances, but some champions such as Samira can really make use of that.
I love that point, because when you have these almost deceptively tanky ADCs, it does throw off that kind of mental maths that a lot of these players are going to be going into it, particularly if you are locking in things like the burstier champions. Could be something that Hope is maybe not really adjusted to if they are playing one of their assassins. Then for the other side, none really that are jumping out and going, oh, well, you really do need to know the exact DPS. But it does then start to ask the question of where else can we use those rune adaptations, particularly things like in the top lane, where we have somebody like Coco, who I'm expecting to default to the Gwen. On the other side, Spirit, we know they've been playing a bit of Darius. Is that something you will be pulling out right here on the UE Masters stage?
I mean, Coco also plays a bit of Darius himself, so maybe we'll see Darius as a contested pick this game, which would be interesting, to say the least. But anything can happen because it's League of Legends.
That's very true. Anything can happen. Anything can happen with these two teams. For all we know, we might be getting role swaps. I doubt that one. Maybe we can safely put that one to bed on the scale of things. So, don't think we need to focus too much more about the game until we end up heading towards Champion Select. I'm just going to ask you a generic question. How are you doing? Not today, because it's the morning, so I doubt that you've got much to say for that, but how are you doing recently?
Yeah, not been too bad. Kind of just been. I'm kind of finally almost free now for like the rest of for the next few months. So at least that's great. Like work on the term of university work, that's kind of died off since Thursday. So that's been nice.
That's got to be everybody starting to reach the end of their almost term and getting past all the coursework goals, things like that. I remember the stress that came along with them. So fair play for that one, and fair play to all the players as well who are somehow managing to juggle comp with their studies. It's always a tough one. Not necessarily because the times typically clash, but because you need to dedicate a lot of time to, obviously, your coursework. Make sure you're studying, everybody. But not more importantly, hold on, I'm going to redact that one before it comes out of my mouth. But equally, you need to make sure that you're dedicating time if you want to be able to compete at this highest level and have any chance in competing with the best of them all across Europe.
Exactly that. It's a high level of play in general. I mean, it's probably the highest level of play that many of these players will ever come to see because, well, it's the highest level of university play. There is not much more to say about that. And it's just impressive, really, that you've made it to this point. And for some people, it's just a matter of just enjoy it.
Exactly. Like, at the end of the day, the atmosphere you get in a team is irreplaceable. You can't match that in any kind of environment. Just having that camaraderie between you. No, you don't necessarily have to be playing on a stage together, while a fair few of these players likely have. I know that the DMU players at least did their most recent finals at the Insomnia Festival, so they would have actually had that experience of playing next to your allies, which really does go towards building that camaraderie even further. Maybe could be a turning point in their consistency, because they looked pretty good across all of those games and then proceeded to 3-0, I believe it was, their following matchup to make their way here. So on a bit of a warpath is DMU right now.
Yeah, I mean, it took a long time to get there, but they got there in the end, and that's what's important. It's the same story for all of these teams. Remember that every single one of these teams at UEM has won their regional league in some fashion. They have been dominant. They have been a dominant factor in their regions, and that is important to mention.
Absolutely, and it's important because if you haven't seen what it's like to win, and you haven't reached that kind of pinnacle, which we know BME have because they qualified in the first place and now they're back again, we can't get rid of them, then as far as it goes, I believe, hold on a moment, we're just getting a bit of news as to what's happening. Apologies to everybody, we have been vamping for a little while, but we are just about to find out what's actually going on.
Yeah, it seems like there's some current issues with DMU in terms of getting into lobby, which means that they're going to be forfeiting their first game, unfortunately.
Okie dokie, that is a rough way to start off a series of not getting to start off the series.
We will be back though once we resolve these issues, and we will be in game for the second game, I suppose. I mean, it does give BME that +1 advantage, but that doesn't mean that Team U's out this by any means. It will just be a short 10-minute break, and then we'll be back to cover the rest of it. the time to come, and that you really do have to make sure that you are ready, you are switched on, so that you can perform to your best ability, where BME now have, I guess, a slight handicap in that, yeah, we can be a little bit more relaxed, we can maybe play, as you said, play for those strategies where, okay, you know what, we're gonna have more fallback, we're not necessarily gonna go as hard in, because we now have that one match up, so it does warp draft a little bit.
So we got a bullet point. 12.8, again, talked about that. Key champions that have been reworked. We got Swain, we got Rengar, we got Wukong. We're on the MSI patch. Everything you're seeing in Pro has the same power level here. We do not have, most importantly, the Pyke changes. It's something that I think we'll likely to see in this series, with Umbral Glaive being absolutely bonkers, getting you insane vision control, very cheap item, very efficient, buffed quite recently, and also enabling you to stack up that zombie ward rune. It means that if you are playing these almost early game lethality champions, you could get a lot done for dominating the early game without actually having to be massively proactive.
Yeah, you can get free real estate attack damage coming in from that rune, but if I'm not mistaken, we should be almost ready to go into the pick ban. Finally, we are here! And the two picks we've talked about that have immediately been banned are the Volibear and that Twitch so soon.
Removing that pocket pick of them and the Volibear. The reason we're talking about that one so heavily is because both of these junglers want to facilitate their mid laners. Volibear is pretty much the champion that does that. It does raise the question of the fact that it was DMU banning it on the blue side though. So curious to see what priority they hold high. Will they be looking towards that Wukong as a flex pick potentially, or if they got something else up the sleeve as now Nautilus is removed?
And Nautilus being one of those champions that Kiko really likes, does like the hook champions in general, but has played a lot of Nautilus during the group stage, and just removing a little bit of comfort from that is always quite nice to see.
Interesting, we get the Syndra banned away from Samjay. That makes me think that Sora will likely be looking towards that Tristana they have prized themselves on so many times. Particularly good champion for just shoving that one away and removing the early pressure, as now another one of those champions that are very good at playing safe and avoiding all aggression is the Veigar, taken off the table by DMU. So far, both of these teams showing a little bit of protecting themselves from engage, but also they're just leaving a lot of open windows on the other side.
But what I do really like about the Veigar ban, as we've mentioned, is maybe DMU really do kind of need to remove more of these fail-safes that BME might have access to, because you really need to guarantee a win. If it comes into the circumstance where the Veigar might have had a chance to scale up, then you're going to be in for a bit of trouble. But we do see that RAB one of the most versatile picks in the meta right now.
With the resets on the ultimate now, it is able to go off in fights, and it really doesn't give much away for a draft. So I like that approach from DMU, especially when the main selling point for both of these teams drafting is they will play any champion in any role if it feels good at the time. So the question is, BME, what feels good into Ahri? What mid lane are you going to be picking up here as we get the Lucian flex pick between mid, bot lane, and Infringe Cajun's top? Curious to see if that will be immediately paired with the Nami, though, who has been slowly creeping their way back into prevalence with a lot of the mainstay ADC duos nerfed.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just the power of Lucian to be able to dominate lane in most circumstances, and that there is that Nami hover coming through. Typically paired with the Lucian as it is this game. There are other options to do it with, but Nami Lucian is known for just being able to absolutely blow somebody up if they're not suspecting it.
We get the immediate response of DMU with this Xayah. I'm curious to see if they're going to go for the Rakan. No, they will actually just lock in the Karma, taking the range advantage, and is going to try and keep Lucian Nami at arm's length. If you can stay ahead on this duo, then there's not much for Lucian Nami to do until they pick up the Gale Force on the Lucian. However, that isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do.
Got a little bit too excited there, maybe, at that Xerath hover, but gonna bring in the Vex here. We've seen a lot of Ahri into Vex, if that does come through. Xerath still an opportunity. No, it will finally be locked in. Wow.
Excellent. Now, something we're talking about could show up in this series. However, I was more expecting it to be on DMU's half, as now Sora taking a very strong champion when it comes to the range factor of it. And we're just talking about how, if we look at the champions in this game, the Ahri and the Lucian Nami are all relatively short range. The Karma Zaya can be effective from long range, provided it's lethality as opposed to crit. And then Xerath now has just trumped that with the longest range in the game. So both of these teams are somehow finding a way to play the game as safe, I say in air quotes, as possible, without really sacrificing any versatility in draft.
And now we pan over and we'll see a plethora of jungle bans, as is with that Hecarim and Sejuani, because it is this jungle matchup which has still not been revealed in draft. Both teams recognizing that it is important to sort of keep that mystique maybe open, particularly for Hope potentially coming in with something like maybe like Evelyn, depending on the draft. I don't think in this spot it would be any good because of the amount of AP that you've already had, but the general principle is maybe there's something in there lurking in the shadows, that pocket pick that you haven't revealed yet.
Lurking in the shadows does make me want to say potentially the Kha'Zix coming out for Hope on the blue side. As we do see now is the Fiora as the very last ban. Makes me think that DMU just warlocking a safe top laner, somebody who doesn't really want to be playing against that. And here is the Wukong hover that I was expecting. Both of these teams just completely ignoring it. It's one of those champions that MSI people are really having a mixed opinion of. It wins, but is it actually doing anything in those wins? As now we get to see it is a flex between top and jungle, so it actually doesn't give DMU that many windows to look for a counter pick here.
And since BME still have that red 5 unlocked, they do have the ultimate counterpick tool to see if they do want to change the matchup here. So BME very favoured currently in this draft position. We'll see what DMU use to round that off. It will be obviously jungle top here, but what sort of things you want to see from DMU?
I'd like a Malphite personally, just because your team has no engage whatsoever. We will get that Kha'Zix I was alluding to. I don't know how happy I am with it into the Wukong, just because they have the ability to almost play around the Kha'Zix stealth and all that kind of thing with the knock-up hitting you regardless on the Wukong Cyclone, as now we get DMU looking to potentially take away in the top lane a carry from Coco. When they banned the Fiora, my instant thought was it'll be Ornn, but they actually go down the Scion route for Spirit instead. A similar engage tool, not as linear, I will say, as the Malphite, but it does mean that now, if you are to lock in what BME are hovering, you can negate that engage.
If I'm not mistaken, though, that Scion change, the nerf to structures in the Death Passive was on 12.9 and not 12.8. Which does mean that if Springer wants to go down the route with the Hullbreaker and just go full side lane, he is still capable of doing it.
Alright, we get the drafts completely rounded out. It will be the Camille picked up finally for BME, putting more carry shoes onto Coco in what should be a pretty comfortable matchup. We have got a lot of areas that we can start bullet pointing across. Where do you want to start?
I mean, we've been hyping up the mid-jungle, so why not start with that?
Alright, I would say as far as the early game goes, the Wukong builds up a lot of base stats, and pre-6, the Kha'Zix isn't at their most effective unless you're literally just face-checking them into a bush. So I'm going to lean over to BME just because of the base stats that Hunty will be able to pick up. However, one of the weakest areas for Wukong is getting invaded in the first few levels, which Hope very well could look to do because all it takes is the Ari Charm coming over a wall, and, well, that's that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting exactly how this is going to function, because we look at the jungle, yep, okay, DMU likely has that early priority with Ari being able to roam fairly well, and that Kha'Zix, as you mentioned, having that advantage in the jungle. Then we pan to bot side, and we see Lucian Army, who is absolutely going to keep pushing in the side of DMU.
Thing is, if DMU can keep the enemy bot lane at arm's length with this Xayah Karma, they're doing great. They can just win the lane off of that, but the issue is, heals beat shields, and Nami can just heal the Lucian back up every single time we see Shruki go in, get a heavy trade onto the enemy bot, and they could just keep rinsing and repeating that, especially pre-6 before Xayah gets that Featherstorm. You are so vulnerable if you ever overstep on this duo, so I am really curious to see if DMU have what it takes to execute on this relatively thin line strategy they've got in the bot lane.
Execution is the key. That is what it comes down to at the end of the game, which team actually manages to execute on their comp. I'm not sure if I would say there's a huge advantage when it comes to execution, but as far as I can tell, I would slightly favour BME.
I'd say that BME have more tools at all points of the game, just because they have that early power point of the bottom lane that gives you free priority around the dragons early on, which helps Hunty have a bit more of a safe time on the Wukong, which is what you want at the end of the day. You need your Wukong to get to level 6 before they reach that maximum effectiveness, and then they become a nuisance for pretty much the whole game onwards. And then for the mid lane, we've got, well, this Xerath that is kind of just the outlier in the team's draft. If Sora can have a great performance, I mean, it's Xerath, right? At the end of the day, this champion is solely as good as however many skill shots you hit. You're playing into a Xerath player, you're actually playing against two of them in the form of the enemy mid and support. So I'm very curious to see if DMU have got any special strategies to handle this champion they prize so highly.
I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like picking Xerath into Ahri is a little bit of an interesting one, given Ahri's mobile nature and ability to be able to dodge those skill shots. So there's definitely a lot of, I suppose, the onus is on Sora to be able to deal with this matchup. And maybe it isn't about directly dealing with Sanjay, but maybe matching pressure or going elsewhere with the Xerath.
First thing we do get to see as we look down at the runes and the summoners, that is a first strike cleanse Xerath. Makes sense for them being able to farm off of their enemy mid laner just using the range advantage. And with the cleanse being able to avoid Samjay going in. However, you can't cleanse a Kha'Zix. And Hope is going to be a very important threat. If they end up falling behind, I do worry for any hope on DMU, pun intended.
Exactly, we'll see what exactly level 1s are going to be. Currently, just defending from both sides. Nothing too spectacular or out of the ordinary. Kind of what you expected. You don't really want to bank your entire game here, which really matters for DMU, off of a potential scuffed level 1.
And it does mean we are going to get normal lane phases as we're hit with a pause.
We're not going to get normal lane phases just yet.
Well, at least we have a champion select to talk about this time around, and because we haven't had any invades, it does mean that this bottom lane in particular is going to be a bit of an even slate. The Nami Lucian doesn't really get that much kill threat until levels 2 and 3. I know those are quite early on, especially when they have both bot laners with double combat sums of Exhaust Ignite. But the point I'm trying to say is that Xayah and Karma can leverage their range advantage to get that early level 2, and if the MU are able to execute on that, they can remove a lot of the early pressure that is going to be put on them.
Exactly that. I mean, you're within your capabilities to just play the lane back and let things happen, because it's sort of almost on you how proactive you want to be as the Xayah Karma. You are likely going to be pushed in. Lucianami will, for the most part, be shoving in the wave, and you have pretty damn good wave clear, so if they decide to recall at a bad time, as the Xayah, you can probably bounce that really easily. So the main worry is, will you get dived by Wukong?
Not until level 6, at the very least, and diving post-level 6 onto a Xayah is dangerous. We'll call it dangerous. There's a lot worse words for it. You probably don't want to be diving into a Xayah. You might be able to kill the Karma, but at the end of the day, will it be worth it, as we do have what looks to be a lethality build coming out for Soxu. Obviously, you said it had been nerfed. How do you really feel around this Xayah build since they had those Q nerfs later on?
I think it's a lot weaker. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of it to begin with. It was, admittedly, it's very fun to play. It's really satisfying. But I generally felt that the way that your scalings worked, unless you went like mixed crit fatality, which people were doing, it didn't really feel as good on the Blade Caller, particularly as the E. But in this game, I can kind of see the reasoning behind it, because you're not necessarily going to have as much of a chance to consistently auto into that team, lest be threatened by Lucian or Wukong. So having the ability to play, literally physically play further back on that poke build, it's probably in your best interest.
As far as ADCs go, if they're not put super far behind, Xayah's one of the best in the game for getting dove into. And the enemy team all wants to dive into you, with the exception of that Xerath, so it should be a lot of ability to play around it, if Soxu makes it that far. That is the big asterisk we're going to keep putting here, because this Lucian Nami Ray just makes us go, well, here's the analysis, but also we know the fact that they could just kill you level 2, 3, 4, etc., etc., and it could get more dire from there. So we need to keep a very very heavy eye onto this bottom lane, considering that it wasn't exactly where we're putting our initial focus. We're saying it's all about mid-jungle, and then using that mid-jungle strength to protect bot. This game, no. BME have just said, we're going to go straight through bot, and then we'll come to mid after.
Exactly that. And this is also, I guess, another reason in favor of going a slightly more early game focused Xayah build, because that area and the ability to itemize lethality very early on in the game provides you more lane agency than the crit build might do.
We are back, everybody, as now we do get to keep our eye on this bottom lane for the early laning. Both junglers starting up in the top side. No shenanigans have been afoot. No wards have spotted out their enemies. And Hope is slightly in the lead, as the Kha'Zix is just that bit better at jungle clearing than the early Wukong, who is a bit slow on their first clear.
Doesn't necessarily have the worst clear in the game by far, by no means it does, but definitely not as fast as some more premier clears that exist in the game. You're not really going to expect to see too much movement right here. I mean, this lane, Coco's just going to keep beating down Spirit. I mean, this is a very winnable matchup for Camille, taking an incredibly aggressive trade here of the Ignite. Can take a lot in return.
I'm very curious what Spirit's going to do, because when you are the Scion with the flash available and knowing that Coco obviously does not have that summoner at all, it means you can almost start to play this lane with a bit more confidence, because if Coco goes for a particularly aggressive trade, then you can just pop them with a flash combo. I think if Spirit had landed the first part of that Q, that was going to be a dead Camille. We will not get, but I want to keep our eyes on bot lane now to see what on earth happens when Kiko hits level 3.
Seems like the lane management from BME wasn't necessarily the way they wanted to do it, as DME have managed to sort of hold it towards their side and are now sort of threatening Kiko a little bit. Nami, it must be noted that Nami has an incredibly squishy health pool early on and throughout the entire game. Her base health is exceptionally low, so despite being able to provide a lot of damage, Kiko has to be very careful where they step.
And interesting, taking a look at the jungle pathing, Hope actually avoided doing their own Krugs, one of the slowest camps for Kha'Zix, because you don't get isolated threats, and just went straight to go for double Scuttle Crab. They're actually going to avoid this top one and try and grab Coco, but they are spotted on a ward. Oh yes, this is the correct decision, Hunty. You definitely do not want to be taking this scrap against the enemy mid-jungle. Oh, he steals it!
The smite there, I mean, is going to reveal himself, get away with the clone.
Wow, okay. That was just a bit of a whoopsie from Hope, thinking that there was no jungler to contest them, and now you are just going to be a solid camp behind, and it's not just that, because you miss out on the Krugs for Hope. You also now haven't reset your own Krugs, so they are not going to be spawning at a higher level. This is very dangerous.
Actually, right now, 2 in the top side. Coco Hunty able to surround him, but you are outnumbered. Karma Root going to be laid down as well as the Ignite. The damage following through, and that will be First Blood donated over to Hope.
The player of the game is Hope for DMU. I couldn't think of a better name to have for this point, as you are going to have the potential to be able to kill anybody as the game goes on. Hunty being the only one that can really put up a skirmish, at least until Camille's on that 2-3 item point. So, a bit of a snowball going over to the Kha'Zix. The question is, what can Hope do with it? You'd expect that means they'd like to translate it into the dragons, but so far, DMU doing a very good job of keeping the enemy bot lane back, meaning that they should have free access whenever Hope wants to go for it.
I mean, right now you're stacking up this wave. Hope is palming down towards the dragon. You also have mid lane priority, so it seems that everything that DMU is doing is pointing towards trying to get this dragon stacking going. And Mountain Drake is a really nice individual Drake just for the stats.
Especially when you look at the enemy team and we'll be able to shred a bit of that armor with the double ADs paired around them. Would very much be helpful if you had a slight bit more in pocket, as now we have both junglers on the bottom lane. Hunty having based, meaning they've got a lot more resources in kit. They have a full sheen, they have a shoe. Hope does not have either, so the question is, will you try and take a skirmish here knowing that both mid laners are level 6?
Samjo's still around. Both teams very aware of what's going on, as we have all the members in the bot side, but with Hope taking a reset here, instead saying, you know what, I'm just going to farm up, keep my advantage over Wukong. Let's not flip the game this early, because we really need to secure this win.
Absolutely, as now Hunty shows himself level 5. Dido very far up.
Actually, a little bit by Lucian with the move speed. It's the Xerath ultimate coming through, forced to flash away. Can Kiko finish it off? Ignite, bubble, that will do the trick, and they do secure 1 kill in return.
Crispy clean on the Nami right there with the flash, ignite, walking away so they don't get the healing from that tether. Clean stuff, as now the dragon left wide open, but Hunty walking straight past it to come down mid. Kiko has the ultimate. Coco, sorry.
With the hope there that, you know, it was a slight overstep from Didol to go for that Q. Yes, you get the money on Spell Thieves, but was it worth it? They made the kill in the end, evening out the game a little bit, but still very much even at this stage in the game. It is only 7 minutes, sort of scouring around the top side. Both junglers really just kind of looking to clear at the moment.
And I imagine that Hope is likely going to be going towards that Umbral Glaive. I don't know whether it is the first item they will be picking up on that Kha'Zix, but we are talking about how strong it is in the pre-game. The ability to just remove all vision from your opposition. And I'm just going to throw it out there, but Dido, I think, has been in the jungle with Hope more after that first recall than we've seen them actually bot lane. Just making sure that this Kha'Zix gets the free farm. We know how scary this champion could be if given resources, and now at the level 6, time to find out what their first evolve will be.
Exactly that. Another benefit of being able to do this is you're donating that solo XP over to Sosu, which means they have now got access to that ultimate before the enemy team has. So the extra safety in that bot lane achieved for the Xayah.
And while we're talking about how mirrored these teams were, this was what we were expecting BME to be doing. We were thinking there was going to be put Shruki on something like the Ezreal, and then have Kiko roam around and try and mitigate the pressure from DMU, but it's actually been leaving Soksu alone on this Xayah to survive against the early Lucian Nami. So far, proving very effective.
Exactly, see what happens. However, Samjay is right here. They do spot Hunty out. They have the collapse. It depends on how both teams want to play this right now. Very, very careful. Samjay gonna flash over. Doesn't hit the charm though, and Shruki fires back with the culling. Gets one in return. Here comes the tidal wave. It should connect down onto Sosu. Not quite enough range though. Didol gonna go down, split off onto the fight. 2 kills for BME.
Massive win for BME, not only picking up the kills, but now they get to crash in that bot wave, collect this dragon. No way for Hope to steal it. This is just awful, because now you have lost all pressure that was in this bot lane that was your stable point. It was going completely fine.
And you could see the deliberation in the faces of both teams there. It's like, oh, we have 3 people, the sort of Mexican standoff there. You don't know what to do. And then Samjay, it must have been something in comms, just decides to pull the trigger. But as soon as that charm doesn't connect, you put yourself in a really dangerous position, and BME capitalized.
And they were going for Kiko, who they knew was a no-flash Nami. But when they don't end up hitting that after getting duped out, it is really dire. Curious to see how far ahead Shruki is going to be. Will they be at the Gale Force? Because if so, this bot lane dynamic shifts dramatically into kill threat for BME. Here it is, time to see what they can do with that extra dash, which Soksu despises. This Xayah is all about being able to position the feathers and then get the pullback to deal a ton of damage. If you're way too mobile, then you really just don't get to do that.
Dimmy potentially looking for a dive here too. Samjay and Hope both available. Coco very, very low as a Camille gets hit by a Silent Q as well. I mean, this should just be an easy dash in and collect by Hope. There it is. Getting one back.
Maximum number of assists, Soksu backing off.
I mean, Flash, Gale Force, you don't even need to really do much more. I think the Gale Force was even overkill in that situation. Sosu just a little bit too far pushed in the lane.
And this is just how it goes. When you have that extra ability to dash, your effective range on the Lucian is now longer than the Xayah's, which was the whole benefit of having the Xayah, was that you could poke away and never be in range.
Dimmy really showing their cards right now. Shruki and Kiko saying that, you know what, we've not really necessarily shown ourselves much in the group stage, but we are here to play, and we are certainly capable players in their own right. It's Hunty. Let's hope in their own jungle. I'm gonna come through. Sora is here to match, but now the 2 members and the onslaught from Sion gonna be enough to be able to take down the enemy jungler.
Very big outplay from Hope with that Prowler's Claw, supported by their solo lanes, is going to at least deny any counter jungling attempt. And once again, put Hope on the farming track. This Kha'Zix is a ticking time bomb. Okay, what on earth happened is there?
I mean, as far as I can tell, the minimap is going to be a double kill for Soso. I want to see. Not entirely sure what happened there, but I imagine it was an overstepped idol really, really precariously low. So clearly the kill was possible and they just overstepped that one little bit.
Hold on a minute. Spirit gun for the solo bolo up here on the Sion too.
There it is, collected.
BME? You alright?
What happened?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting to see the microcosm of what we said about this team of they can be really good, but they can't maintain that consistency, and that was what we wanted to see if this team was to be moving on, was to have BME actually show consistent performances. Oh my god, Hunty, not again.
I mean, this time there isn't necessarily the support, but they read the play. Ari's now there. Maybe they could kill Hope before something else happens. Hunty now forced to move away. Spirit is on the other side. He's going to have to dash over the wall, but then with the knockback. During that one, I don't think they can collect Sora, but they can probably collect this big crab.
Credit to Didal being everywhere on the map. These speed boosts are so irritating to play against for BME. Strange maneuver from Hunty, dying in the enemy jungler, decided to go for the salty run back, as now in the bottom lane it is going to be the question of can Shruki and Kiko get this dive onto Soxu, or are they just going to waddle away as Herald taken on the other side, likely going to go down mid at some point. This Xerath, while the champions, that really prizes their mid-tier 1 tower, they're just chucking it down for plates, okay.
I mean, you have got 20 seconds left on the plates, you might as well throw it down, make sure you get some gold value rather than just donating XP over to the other team. Cashed in for Hope a little bit more to get that lethality rolling.
It was basically a kill, is what Hope just got there off of plate gold. A kill and a bit. It's going to be helpful, but they won't get to spend that gold before the dragon, which will be up in 40 seconds. If Hope is to take a recall here, they are going to be late to the objective. Question is, will BME force it off spawn? Probably not, considering their lose-it-all bot prio.
Very interesting, exactly how the team's set up. Still 20 odd seconds left, but now with DMU forcing the priority in bot side, I feel like they have the numbers lined up. Hope is on the back of a reset. It's now really BME's decision as to whether they want to contest this.
Well, that's the thing. You can't really walk forward. Wukong is down a level to the enemy jungler. You don't have your mythic. You're not that tanky. No Divine Sunder are picked up yet. So it is quite dangerous to go forward, especially with the early spikes on the enemy side from this Kha'Zix at mythic. Hold on, this is dangerous.
Feeling a little bit of deja vu here, 3-3. Not necessarily the same numbers, but
it was a solo kill top, by the way. That happened, so Spirit now has complete priority to TP down. I feel like you just have to abandon this objective now if you're BME, knowing that if you go for it, you are likely to just get TP'd on by Sion and 5v4 to death.
Still looking for it at the moment, hovering around. Maybe they're looking for Sanjay to get some sort of advantage here. I'm not sure if spending this much time, your camps are still up. It's not too bad to give this away.
I like this. Hope is just lurking, hoping that the over-aggression kicks in on the BME bot lane again.
I don't know.
They do not know, chat.
Doesn't happen. Shruki is in range. Will the Kha'Zix pull the trigger? Dashing away. Flash forward from Didal. There it is. Kiko goes down, but it's returned. And Didal also does it. I mean, it's
moves.
a 1-for-1 Hunty, maybe looking for the pickup.
Shruki is very low, though. This will be effectively a 1v2. They get the exhaust for free, though, so Hunty not going to complain with that. Can look towards this dragon, because they have the Cyclone. They do have the Smite, and Hope, without ult, without Prowler's Claw, would be making a likely one-way trip if they head into this objective. As once again, BME not even going to look at it. They're just going to look to try and collect mid, but the tower's already gone, guys. Like, I don't know. DMU are just catching BME on shambles.
I mean, there is one thought that, well, you know, with the reveal of Mountain and Ocean being the first two Drakes, the likelihood of it being a relatively unimpactful Cloud Soul is relatively high, so maybe the Drake stacking isn't as important, but no, they will instead still opt to get the Drake after some deliberation, and that should go to BME, save for a potential steal from DMU.
Oh.
They
Okay.
do not get a hunt. He does end up securing that one in the end, and it will not be a Cloud Soul, but rather a Hex Tech, which is the significantly more impactful outcome.
And looking at how that actually impacts this game, I would say that BME are quite pleased considering the ability to roam and how far ahead Spirit is. The fact that Coco can now try and match it with these Hex Gates if he doesn't die again.
Nice dodge away using the ultimatum. Spirit is just a little bit too tanky though, so Coco can't really get anything more done.
It's a lead. This Scion is 3 levels up. Spirit has been quietly decimating the top lane, which is really what you want if you are DMU. Giving that constant point of pressure has just meant that BME don't have anywhere to fall back on. They have a fed Lucian, but they cannot kill Spirit. There is no way this Lucian Nami can handle the Scion.
Absolutely. I mean, if we take a look at the gold differential, I mean, the rest of the map looks relatively even. 4-on-1 Lucian, got a lot of gold on the bot side for BME, matched relatively by the Ahri and the Xayah. But then as soon as we pan over to the Camille and the Scion, it just shifts so much over to DMU that I feel like most of that lead is coming from Spirit.
That and my biggest issue with the BME squad, not only how on earth do they kill Scion, that's a question for a team fight that I don't think BME have an answer for, but more importantly for me is how do they survive against the enemy squad?
Shruki really thinks of having to kill Force away. Shirelia's coming through to try and collect the kill onto Shruki. Not quite enough move speed though, and he will escape on this.
Okay, well I guess you survived like that. Well, that happened. Okay. We get another pick off as DMU trying to say, no, hold on, we can play scrappier than that, my friend. As, dear God, is Samjay building a Everfrost into Rabadons?
It sure looks like it. Going for the raw AP.
Not sure how I feel about that. Soxu on a sliver of HP against Sora. We are getting a scrappy game. That's all I've got for you right now, Takua. We have got a scrappy game from both sides. It's what we're expecting. What does it mean heading forward into the last game of this series if we get another one? It means it
3 numbers to match. So has to be so careful here.
So much confidence. Overconfidence? Probably. Confidence nonetheless.
Oops, still lurking in the bush, going for keeper. I mean, I feel like you have to back out. The numbers aren't available. You probably don't win this fight. Amount of damage from that Xerath Q.
Oop, more than happy to just burn the ultimate. If Kiko had walked forward, they were definitely going to be a plate of sushi. Will not end up getting that one, as if I am looking for how DMU want to advance this game state, they want to just farm. Like, you do not need to be super proactive, super aggressive right now. You have an amazing lead. And,
looking for it. They managed to interrupt the hookshot. That might be what they need to get the kill onto Coco here. Hextech Ultimatum securing a little bit more time. That's the next smash landed for Spirit. And that should be collected. In the end, wait, Samjay's almost dead. Dashes away with the Spirit Rush. Spirit now the one in trouble onto Hunty and Sora, and maybe it's just time that you sacrifice your Scion for this play. Samjay probably doesn't want to stay around for too much longer, but that gold going over to Xerath. Wait, maybe he gets the slow? One more? Still got one shot left, and loaded. No, not quite.
Okay, that's going to be the 1-for-1, but it's definitely a bigger win for BME, collecting the shutdown on the Scion. And the issue is with this comp is that Sora on this Xerath does not have a tower to hide behind, so if they ever step up, they are very vulnerable, meaning every time we get this ultimate coming out from the Xerath, it needs to matter, because that is the time when you can actually exert some pressure, since that mid lane tier 1 tower went down all too long ago.
Okay. 4,000 lead for DMU, but 2 Drakes over to BME and is a very significant soul to be playing with. I would say, I mean, this is fairly even call. I mean, with that shutdown over, you gained a lot of immediate power for this upcoming objective, and it might just come down to the way this team fight gets played out.
Especially with the clone, it means that really annoying for Spirit to join these fights because Hunty can just drop a decoy. Hold on a minute.
Hope going for it, but that's going to be responded by both ultimates. You get that out, and for nothing on Hope. Hope can heal that health up relatively quickly.
They're walking to the dragon, but Sora is looking. They do have enough damage to burst our target, but not hitting the important stun. Still going to do a massive chunk. As the right of the arcane is about to be up, we see Spirit having to join with their team because nobody else can eat the damage from this Xerath.
Each Arcana Pulse right now doing so much.
BME just don't have a window in right now. Hunty can stealth in and look, but it would be a death for them trying. Dragon gone.
Secured. Spirit looking for the engage onto free. It's matched by Hunty in the back, who gets the shutdown. No kills yet for DMU in the forward. Coco and Hunty still managing to make so much trouble, cause it for DMU. 3 kills over to BME, and what looked like an amazing engage from Spirit just wasn't capitalized.
The entire of the DMU squad got split apart. BME managed to kill off the rest of the team members and avoid Spirit. So well played by Hunty and Coco in particular, just completely running the top side of that skirmish. Has really changed the pace of this game. They end up losing the dragon, but I think they're going to be okay with that kind of gold injection. Question is, how are they going to spend it? We do get a Bloodthirster for Shruki already picked up for them. My question is, are they just going to go towards the IE next? I would expect so into the enemy team, considering that Spirit went down a lot faster than we expected.
Spirit definitely didn't look quite as tanky when the damage was laid down onto them, but I think the main problem there was that counter engage by Hunty and Coco. Hunty, though, might be on for a death here between Hope and Ida. They will secure that one. Nice little shutdown in return to DMU. The momentum constantly moving back and forth between these teams.
I would say I feel like DMU can look to do Baron here, but they don't have their ADC. Just because you kill the enemy jungler in front of the Baron, that immediately sets off the alarm bells of, can we take it? Won't be the case. Scuttlecrab already down. Will just end up being a standard death in this ever more bloody game that we are getting.
And it is really going to show how the inconsistencies between both teams are playing out. There are these amazing plays where we see stuff getting secured. I don't think Shruki has enough damage on their own. The Unstoppable preventing the tidal wave. Now Kiko getting locked down, charmed down. Samjay gonna slay that one. Spirit now onto 2, looking for more. DMU are Hunty coming through, culling onto Spirit. He's just a little bit too tanky as the Scion, and there isn't a return play for BME.
Right now, it's just a bit of a split map. Tower getting absolutely bopped by Spirit. By a minor mistake earlier on, they have been an absolute dominating force on the Scion. And they need to keep that going. Real hope for the team is on the Scion, not the Kha'Zix, believe it or not, at this point in the game.
Very, very close. It just keeps happening. One team matches the other in a play. They succeed off of it, use something using the momentum they've gained, and the cycle just repeats itself. I just feel like it might end up coming down to whether one team fight gets executed more and who capitalizes more off of it, and maybe just the timing of it. Could it just be the final soul fight? Maybe it's a Baron dance that comes down to it. But it is just so tense right now.
Well, when you have such a seesawing game, those objectives are what matter. The dragons, the barons, because those are the things that actually stick, regardless of how these skirmishes go. Hunty looking for something on Samjay is just going to burn the ultimate for free. Important, but will it make much of a difference? Not necessarily, only for looking for more of these scrappy picks that Spirit Rush will be back up before the dragon. If you want to force a Baron, you can, but I don't know if that's wise.
They're going to be fighting over the crab instead. Hope diving in, diving out. Tidal wave coming through in response. Nobody dead.
At this point, it's just a matter of which cooldowns are gone for your opposition, and can you remember it, because both of these teams completely looking for every window possible. I think that it's even more important for BME to be doing it, because if Spirit is not on the skirmish, then it's plenty winnable. Look at the enemy team's defensive stats. Not a defensive item across them. You can argue Shirelia's for Didol, but that's just a standard support item. It's not exactly a locket. It's not going to stop you getting bursted by Sora, which, as we have seen so far, is pretty much an inevitability for everybody on DMU unless you are the Scion.
And that is worth saying, is that DMU for some time now have been managing to keep these lanes pushed out. Now the benefit of this is the momentum and priority that it can give you. When you have these lanes pushed out, it forces BME to almost sort of match the side lanes, clear and push back out. That gives you the setup around objectives like this at the moment. They've had this setup a lot, but it just doesn't seem like they've managed to use it properly.
It's do or die for DMU. If you lose this one, you're heading into the losers bracket, so every skirmish matters, and I really like this. They're using Spirit's just sheer tankiness and intimidating presence to push back the enemy jungler. That's the only one that matters. You want to be able to burn through this objective fast. Hope on the Kha'Zix will do it. You have a flank from Samjay available if you want to look for the fight, but I feel like just getting the dragon and getting out is a win already.
That's the idea. Hunty on the hunt, but I don't think there's any victims for him to collect on. Manages to make the escape dragons now 2-2.
Don't do it, Didal. Don't do it. Oh gosh, this game just feels so tense. There's always something happening. That there is never just that moment of respite that you really want. It is rising, rising, rising action. As BME are now looking to siege down mid. But again, you're against the Scion. All it takes is Spirit backing off from this scrap and TPing him. Or I say backing off, maybe they just kill Coco.
I mean, Samjay's going to be the one TPing and instead trying to get the kill onto the Camille. Coco is just unable to touch Spirit.
There we go. Spirit needs to get over there because of the Baron. It is a 4v4. Sora is blocking the way, but you can't slow down the Scion. Okay, maybe he can.
And this is still even numbers at the end of the day, but I'm not sure how advantage you are coming into this pit. They don't get the kill on the Sora, and that matters so much because now he fires off this right. The Arcane picks up 2 with it. In forward goes Sosu, gonna get 1 in response, but is it enough? Samjay finally able to make it to the fight. Sora still alive, providing all this poke. I mean, as long as they deny the Baron, that's all they need to do. Hunty getting extremely low. Spirit gonna pick it up.
Spirit
and in the end,
back. They won't go for it though. Just gonna take the mid priority. DMU collapsing in time is going to take that. Overall, coming out as a straight up 3-4-3 exchange, but DMU come out on top on the map, stay able to pick up this mid lane tower. The question is, do they get out without suffering any more losses? They should be able to. Coco not gonna waddle on in. They saw what happens when they see the solo laners, and it is not pretty.
be so careful about when you take these fights, because as soon as Sora managed to escape with their life, managed to do so much damage from that range using the ultimate, and that really made the difference there against DMU. But then they went a little bit too hard in, and as soon as Spirit and then Samjay comes into the fight, they couldn't really do much more.
I feel like I blink and Spirit has a new item. We've now got the Frozen Heart and starting to build towards that Gargoyle's Stone Plate, finally getting some MR to their name. But it won't really do much against Sora, who is easily doing true damage to the entire enemy team with all of that pen from the Ludens, the Void Staff, the Shadow Flame, the shoes. I feel like if you are ever hit by the stun from Sora, you're just going to drop. Yeah, because with the follow-up potential from this team, especially in the Lucian Nami, and the fact that Nami can actually give that Tidecaller's Blessing over to the Xerath, and then the ultimate shots will slow you as well. So oppressive. We've seen multiple fights in a row with Hunty just flashing in to secure the knock-up, enabling that ultimate hit from Sora. Last time around, it ended up killing Hope and stopping any Baron attempt both ways. Now, the Dragon spawning in 2 minutes. Will they be able to find a pick and set up for it?
That has really been the story of this game. Both teams needing to find some kind of advantage going into a fight, because when you play fights so evenly like this on terms, as we've seen in that previous Baron fight, it just ends up going far too even. It's too much of a coin flip to attempt to do. You really need a sizable advantage going into it if you can be able to be confident to secure an objective.
And something we haven't yet seen from BME is a collapse onto Spirit. Because we now know you have the damage to kill them. Wukong will eventually be able to do it. You have 2 Divine Sunderer users, and with the relatively low amount of MR, Spirit does actually die to Sora. So why haven't you looked to collapse on them? Well, this is why. Because you cannot give over that priority around the Baron against the Kha'Zix.
That control ward hasn't actually caught that vision. They have perfect vision on the Baron. They know they started up, but Spirit has the engage from the other side. Surrounds a Humpty. No damage comes through, and almost gets annihilated between Sora and Shruki. Now the presence is on BME. Can they make the turn? The numbers are low. The damage is there, but Coco's gonna get shredded alongside Sosu. It's a 1-for-1, but it's gonna get picked up by Sora right now, doing so much damage on the Zera.
5 shots, 5 hits, 2 deaths for DMU. So nicely done on this deathless Zera for Sora. They're going to be able to walk it down mid here. No engage potential. Yes, you can ult in as Spirit, but I feel like you'll be walking away as a ghost if you do.
So tense, as we said, you really need an advantage going into these fights. Spirit got the engage on the one side, but it just wasn't enough to secure the victory versus BME in that fight. Now we secure a Drake, and it's on DMU to see what they could do to match it on the map.
My god, they're going to TP in and just try and rush the Baron. They have double solo lane the TP.
BME, no.
They have a blue ward. They didn't have vision of them walking over, right? I didn't see them get a ward, but the blue ward will spot out, and that is both of the teleports gone for DMU. Now, the only thing is, we can put an asterisk on that and say, BME never saw the teleports, so they don't know for certain that they were both used, meaning that they can't play as aggressive in the side lane with Coco as they would otherwise want to. It's going again.
Flying it up. I mean, they did just come back on the reset, so it might be too slow for BME to get here.
They don't have another blue ward in range. They've got it. Unless Sora spots out. Oh my god, Sora spots at the blue ward. They can steal it all.
2,000, 1,000. Can Zera get steal 200 health? Just about for Hope.
Oh.
And that is the Hope DMU needed to stay in this game.
Absolutely heart-wrenching. A terrifying call from DMU pays off. Oh, not going to be punished for using those TPs. They're now going to have to force something, though, because in 4 minutes' time, it is sole point now for BME. Oh, god.
No. That is disgusting.
He's got him. This isn't what DMU are used to. They're meant to be doing this. This is what Sanjay does, and it's being done to their own teammates. You have to find something with this Baron buff, but it's immediately mitigated just from Sora plus Kiko.
I mean, the funniest part is you had both Featherstorm and an Edge of Night, and that still wasn't enough to survive Sora's onslaught there. Just going to show you really do need to shut down the Zeraf at some point. Still, definitely in this game.
That's the thing, it's got to be off of the back of Super Dive, but your Super Dive threats are being forced like this.
Well, at least Coco with the overextend there, you're going to get something out of that. Now the collapse on the top side looking to siege versus a Baron buff admittedly, so not going to get too much done.
I just find it ridiculous the fact that the team with Baron is getting sieged against right now. That is just how absurd the game state is in BME's favour.
I mean, they have the structures right now. I mean, but if we really have a look at the map at large, it is actually kind of even, right? So BME had the advantage there off the back of the fact that they're able to push, and you have the vision advantage. I mean, that bot jungle is pretty much all red, so that's great, but at the end of the day, DMU aren't strictly in a disadvantaged state because of, if they still win one fight, they can probably still push down and end the game, or at least get a significant advantage for inhibitors.
We're definitely at the point now where an ace will likely result in a win, just because mid lane, shortest lane on the map, does have both inhib towers revealed. You'll at very least exactly be setting up for the endgame, and with Hex Gates on the table, you can rotate even quicker. Where are you going, BME? Okay, they're looking to threaten the top inhib tower and steal this blue buff away before the dragon. I don't know about that. Yeah, they've decided to call that playoff and come back to mid lane. It's all about getting that mid prio, set up for the soul point as best you can, and mitigate the remains of the enemy Baron buff.
I mean, this is great from DMU to recognize this is now what they need to do. Hopefully see them clearing out some of this vision, setting up some of their own, although both of those blue wards are still surviving in those bushes right now, so not necessarily achieved to the best of their ability yet.
Okay, got a minute and 20. Remember, DMU lose this, they're heading into losers bracket. If they win, we get a game 3 against BME, and we can see what stuff they are built of. Right now, have a very, Hence, game state. The constant back and forth skirmishes that filled this game have dropped off. The Xayah has most definitely scaled. The Xerath can easily kill any target bar Spirit with just the ultimate now. So the question is, will they find anyone? Will anybody step out of position from DMU? Because at the end of the day, if Coco TP's in and just ults someone, they can stopwatch and let Sora do all the damage.
Exactly that. Coco just needs to be able to set up for the rest of BME. And as for DMU, it's really trying to find this angle. If they can get onto the all-important target that is Sora, a difficult task as it might be, but certainly would help you win the fight.
Got the rotate right here. Samjay having TP'd in. It looks like BME, with Camille still not here, alright, are very confident. I don't know if it's well-placed confidence right now. Here we go. Okay, 5 seconds up. Nobody has postured around the objective. If you don't do something, the Xerath team will eventually win off of Poke. You need to find a good angle and avoid getting chipped down by these Arcana pulses.
It's just going to become an inevitability at some point. Yet to land one, though. Samjay looking for the flank. Currently 5v5. Coco now
spotted,
doing the same thing, but that does so much to hope 60% of his health bar.
There.
Evaporated. Spirit now looking for it. They really need to do something, but that charm goes onto the clone. Coco round the back. Hope really, really low right now. The jungler goes down, having to smite for help, dashing away from the right of the arcane. Dodging and diving, still not quite enough. Sanjay will secure the first kill onto Coco, diving a little bit too far, but these health bars are so low from DMU.
They have the smite available, and it looks like DMU are backing off. They're not going to try unless it was stolen. It is not.
And they force the flash away, but the attempt on the steal ends up leading to the shutdown. Shruki now with the tidal wave, trying to go for the rest of its Spirit, getting so damn low. Going for Sosu, enough damage comes through from the Lucian, living just about, and it all goes to BME in the end.
Everybody falls. Quadra kill over to Hunty, as now the map is unlocked. The Ghost Scion will not get anything done. But look at these minion waves. They can't end because there's no minions to push.
You might have gotten the soul, and that's what's important. You got the ace, but it's not the game yet, and there is an Elder Drake spawning in 5 minutes, so it's absolutely not over.
Baron up in 13 seconds. This should be a freebie with the Hex Gates, so it will not be the end for BME, but it will definitely set them in prime position, because now, we were scared of the ults from Sora before. The thing is, anything that hits will slow and set up for that perfectly. No attempt for DMU to do anything. They are going to be cowering on the back foot, and it needs to be a force ASAP. You need to find a pick, because if you get pushed into your base, the enemy team will be able to just walk you down. What can DMU do to get some safe territory and look for something to slow down the BME endgame?
Exactly that. I mean, it might just be the BME tidal wave coming through. Once you have all these buffs stacked atop each other on the base, it becomes, as you said, so difficult for DMU to make the defense. But if they do manage to make that defense, then the game blows wide open again.
Well, it blows wide open, but the thing is, just look at how safe BME are playing this right now. Because if you do force, then there's a stopwatch on the Camille. Hold on, let's look down there.
Alright, Coco's starting to get low. Stalling time! What was that, Sora? That was unholy! A double kill from a kilometer away!
It doesn't matter where you are. If Sora has ult, they are there to protect you. As Coco getting the free bait on this Camille in the side lane. This should be the end of the game. If one more member dies for DMU, it definitely is.
Coco looking for it. All you need is that engage. Right now, Sora is doing too much damage for DMU to handle. Right now, with the buffed minion wave on top of Nasher and the Hextech Soul, 5 members to 3. It all seems but an inevitability.
Pushing down, Samjay poked out, doesn't have the ult. They're diving in.
Blade caller, but the damage just isn't there. Sosu and Sanjay just can't approach because Sora is dishing out far too much damage. No deaths yet to BME. They are getting low, but you have too many cannons, too many minions, and BME will take the first best of 3, moving on to the next round of the UEM Last Chance qualifiers.
Dropping into the lower bracket is DMU, and a amazing comeback performance from the front foot to the back foot to the front foot to the back foot. This was truly a race of a game, 41 minutes overall, and it was a hell of a show.
Certainly was. Commiserations to DMU and congratulations to DMU for moving on. The road is not over for DMU. They can still make it through the lower bracket if they manage to pull through on that end. And there is that slight feeling of maybe if we had everything gathered together and there weren't any problems on our side, could have brought it to the game 3 in the next one, but that's not what happened. And, well, BME, particularly Sora that game, really showed how powerful they are.
And I was surprised. The Xerath was something that, while we knew they played, based on the games I'd seen from this player, it wasn't something that I thought made a massive amount of sense for them. It was something that they really did prove themselves throughout the course of this game. They are a very diverse player in the champion pool, and I am excited to see what more we can see from Sora as they will move on.
I think we have some replays lined up from that game. We do not have replays. In fact, I've been re-informed of that one. It's my bad. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But regardless of the fact, Sora's performance there, absolutely memorable, ended up just being the problem where DMU didn't have the enough hard engage to be able to get onto that Xerath.
And at the end of the day, they still have more chances to go at it, but as we saw, this is the last chance qualifier for a reason. You only get to drop down to the lower bracket once, and that is why BME are going to be very confident moving on, having not had to show much as they head forward into the next best of 3. We are also going to be heading that way, but after a little bit of time.
Certainly remember that BME was one of those groups that, one of those teams even that was in the groups originally, and as such, definitely one of the favourites, let's say, or one of the more favourable teams to be able to make it through the bracket. But as for now, I don't think that's anything from me, and we should be panning over to a break for a little bit until we get onto the next best of 3. So in the meantime, check out Twitch Student and Intel, because those are 2 great sponsors that are being able to power the stream, because we wouldn't have this broadcast without them.
Oh, hold on a minute.
Okay.
I've been told we have to give an MVP.
True, actually.
Okay.
I mean, Sora is one of them. I would definitely
kind of an
say
obvious
that
MVP.
That is the by far and large.
So let's talk about the
most
second
obvious.
MVP. So who is it after them? Because Coco had a pretty rough time in the top lane against Spirit. They definitely put up a dominant force on this Scion. And then following up after that, Hunty again on the Wukong, mixed. I would say that overall it has to be, I think, Kiko on this Nami. Getting a lot done supporting both their ADC and the mid laner. But again, this game was so back and forth. I felt like I watched 2 games in one.
Yeah.
We did get the full best of 3 all rolled into one package. As I don't know. I think that Shruki's Lucian was quite good. On the other side, they were able to get the better hand of Soxu a lot of times over, but it was a very passive early game up until it kind of just collapsed after that initial play from DMU that ended up backfiring.
Yeah, and I feel like that was sort of the essence of this game, is both teams making a play, trying to do something proactive, it being responded to, and that either that response not being enough from DMU in certain cases, or being enough, and then DMU having the proactivity, and then in the end it was BME with the greater response. So yeah, but at the end of the day, I feel like all players managed to contribute significantly at the end of this outcome. I wouldn't necessarily say that, yes, Sora had that stellar performance, but it wasn't until the later stages of the game where Sora was actually unable to do that.
Exactly. And again, I'm looking over to see what we've got heading up for the next series. We have currently guaranteed that we have Yotaru Pessy God, which is a team that we also got to see back in the group stage. This was a team in Group B. There was a 3-way tie for 3rd place. You may know Group B as the one that had Kit in it, so that's obviously a reason why all of these teams ended up dropping too, as they moved out of the group with 8-0, looking to repeat their clean sweep performance of the tournament once again. Behind them, we have got Braves that were the one to escape the group. Again, very dominant, 6-2, only dropping their games to Kit. So it meant for the rest of these teams that were in there, including Yutaru, who have made their return through the last chance qualifier, that they really didn't get a chance to show what they're actually made of.
Exactly that. I mean, Yotaro had an incredibly difficult group, and we have been informed that it will be Italy versus Czechia, so that is going to be Yutaro Pesigod versus 0-2, two groups that were in the group stage originally, but had never met.
Yes, 0-2 playing in Group A and getting third place joint. Actually, third place joint with the team we just saw ended up winning, a BME, so expect very similar form coming out for our next series. Curious to see what Yutaru can actually bring. It was a very new team that overall did not have that much time to mesh, considering the first thing they played against was Kit, and oddly enough, that is one way to crush a team's confidence, but they managed to hold their resolve.
I mean, it was impressive because the first game you have as a team coming into the entire tournament, the first game you played at UEM was versus the reigning champions, and you're a team that haven't actually played together for very long. So that in and of itself, being able to, I guess, put up a defense, because in the early game it didn't look terrible.
It didn't look terrible. That is one way of saying it. They had a decent first game, but the second time around when they played against Kit, it was actually quite a compelling performance where it looked like there were definitely points in that game where we could have seen Kit fall down, and then they had their standard, oh, you walk up to Baron? Guess we'll just win the game off of the back of it. So now, talking a bit more about the two teams that we have got coming up for you in a little bit of time, we've got 0-2. Another squad who had very mixed performances, went 1-1 with BME, and the last thing we saw from them in the group stage on stream was that 0-2 actually managed to turn around their luck and come back and beat BME in a very long, elongated game.
We will see this all in the time to come because we are finally able to pan it over. Again, check out Twitch Student and Intel in the meantime, but we will be back for that 0-2 versus Yutaro Pesigod after a little break. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 2022 Amazon University Esports Masters Last Chance Qualifiers, of course powered by Intel and Twitch Student. Melvin Izzle is over here, and I, Takua, am here as well, and we are here for the second best of three of today between Italy and Czechia.
We've had both of these teams before. I hate to say this is a bit of deja vu. We've never seen them play against each other, but these are both teams that I'm very excited to see back, because it means that both of them managed to win back their way through their last chance qualifiers of their own regions after making it to groups in the first place, showing complete dominance for each of them in their regions.
Absolutely that, and as we've both seen them in groups, they've both been in groups which have had pretty damn strong teams, potential tournament favourites, especially in the reigning champions for one half, where you had Pesigod being a new team coming into a group with their first game versus the reigning champs.
Yeah.
Pretty big statement to begin with.
Yeah, that game was not one that I'm sure they'll be looking back on and wanting to remember, but admittedly, Yutaro Pesigod in that Group B did have a much better game against Kit SC White, where they were able to take them to, I believe it was about 30 minutes around the Baron, at which point the game completely fell apart, but they were actually winning for a majority of that, which shows this team has a lot to offer that I'm very excited to see now that we get them in a completely unbiased scenario.
Exactly that. I mean, both these teams, we're going to take a look at the roster of Yutaro Pesigod, have sort of a little bit of a more difficult read on, purely because of those group stage performances. But this is a team that has been developing, comprised of that Buddy, Nebula, Mazu, Piscolo, and Sirius. But we're particularly going to be looking at, I would say, the jungle and the ADC for this team in particular.
And when we were looking down the list of them, Nebula strikes us a bit of a facilitator across the board, whereas bot lane, Piscolo, that is where it's at for this roster. Big Tristana player, we've seen them play, the Ashe was in that Kit SC White matchup, and they had a great performance. This player loves to be given resources, and definitely has the champions to stomp with it.
Absolutely that. One little factoid coming in from the group stage is that Piscolo had the third highest gold share of any team in the entire group stage, which is very impressive.
Very impressive. And part of the reason for that is because they are facilitated not only from the jungle, but also from mid lane. Mazu has got there that they play Orianna, LeBlanc, and Lissandra, but I think that's a bit of a misnomer of their karma is something that this team prizes very highly. Big flex between all of the roles you'd expect, top, mid, and support. And overall, it's one of those ones that can help facilitate, especially when they have these early game junglers. Things that we might see, despite it not being on the rework patch yet, and Olaf come out. Viego, things like that. Diana also doing quite well in Nebula's hands. And the Volibear, most importantly. That's one that I'm keeping an eye on to see where that ends up showing in this draft.
Exactly. I talked a little bit about Italy, but now I'm going to throw it over to the other side of 0-2. And that's comprised of Gatsu, Gorni, Tobu, Pekeko, and Metis.
For me, the last thing we saw from this team was both sides of the matchup against BME, who was the team that ended up winning our first best of 3 of the day. So we actually do have a pretty good power scaling point for this roster. We saw them get absolutely stomped after losing a First Blood level 1 by them, and then proceed to come back with a very similar draft and win in a dominant 40-minute game fashion. So I think that 0-2 have got a lot to offer, and especially when the draft is always hinged on the fact you have to ban Gorni Zac. They have got something like hundreds of games on it at this point. It is their most played. They are a Grandmaster player. Nothing else comes close. It means that this roster just shifts your perception of the draft as soon as you get in.
And it's really not just the Zac that you have to be careful of, but really the entire team. Yes, Tobu is mostly a control mage player outside of the Yasuo, Yone, Aurelia that you see, which are pretty big carry picks. Not that we've seen it too much during the group stage, because for the most part during the group stage, it was actually more of a bot focus in Pekeko.
And this player has been a bit closer to the facilitator role. They get a lot of gold on things like the Jhin, and they try to carry with that. We saw they did pull out a Kalista game in the group stage, so that's something that we know that this player is happy to try and go for more of the carry positions. But looking through, they seem to gravitate more towards that Jhin, the Senna, these card champions, the Xayah as well. They weren't really a big Jinx player, which is fine considering we're on patch 12.8, and all those big ADCs were nerfed. Xayah cut down. We've got the Jinx cut down. Zeri, similar thing. Aphelios, still okay, but with the Gale Force nerfs, it means that now we have a lot more versatility and a lot more openings in this ADC role to see stuff like the Twitch pop up, stuff like the Jhin keep in focus, the Ashe as well. All champions that I think we need to have in the forefront of our eyes for this series.
Yeah, exactly that. And normally when you're thinking about ADCs, especially the interaction between these two teams, or just teams in general, you tend to think about, okay, well, maybe it's just, hard carry, we bring in something. But when we look at 0-2, and when we look at Pesigod, both the ADCs, yes, they are focal points on their individual teams, but it's not necessarily through a more traditional manner, it's more through, I would say, utility, maybe.
Exactly, that almost top-down perspective of directing your team as opposed to actually just being the first one in, which is good considering typically when ADCs are the first one in, they don't end up making it back out. So, taking a look at some of the other key champions, talked about mid lane, Toibu being a bit of a control mage connoisseur outside of those aggressive champions. Orianna is actually one of the most played for both of them.
Absolutely. It is a control mage matchup in the mid lane between the two mid laners, so potential Resident Sleeper. Hopefully we don't have any of that today. They do have some more dynamic picks back in their pocket, but I would say that even in the few games we've seen, Toibu's Orianna was fairly dynamic in the second round of their rematch versus BME.
That was definitely the better performance of the two, as we saw an absolute shift in how this player goes about it. They were having an awful time the first game. We don't need to keep referencing that. But the second time around on their Orianna playing against the Tristana of Sora, they had a killer performance, not dying in the lane, managing to be that constant surviving force for the roster and really help tie together the team, which is what you need, especially now we are heading into the first best of 3 we're going to see from both of these squads.
And that is something that is worth pointing out, because the group stage was a best-of-1 format. This means that we never really got to understand or see how well either of these teams develop within a series, which is a very different situation, considering that both of these teams have yet again made it back here to Last Chance Qualifiers. They've clearly got some experience when it comes to playing series.
Exactly, and that's something that we can immediately chalk up to, all right, we don't need to worry about that. They must have that degree of versatility, that ability to look at different styles and adapt throughout a series. Admittedly, with it being a best of three, if you get the first one wrong, you only get one more chance, which is actually just the complete same thing as the bracket overall. This is upper bracket stage you are seeing. So if these teams lose, they'll drop down, but we will not be seeing them again on the stream. They'll be trying to compete for those 4 spots up in the playoffs that are still available.
Yeah, trying to contest it. And remember, we have a lovely prize pool. These teams are playing for a lot at stake, 14,500 euros total for that. But more importantly, for a lot of people, it is the experience of being able to play League of Legends esports at this level for their university in a team, because it's not something you get to see every day.
No, it's a very rare and unique experience, especially when you get to come in, compete, and then come back again. That is something that both of these teams are going to be holding close to their hearts, because you saw what it was like to play against the potential tournament favourites in each of their respective groups. And now, it's their time to compete against more even competition. This is where you get to flex. This is where you get to be matched and try and ascend up those rankings, because if they win here, then they are only 2 steps away from making it for those rematches against teams like Kit.
Yeah, you're in a really solid position to make it through the last chance qualifiers, and what you want to do, you want to make it to playoffs. It's the end goal of this part of the UEM tournament, and of course both teams are looking to do that. How we'll see that in draft in the time to come, seeing how they'll adapt, but on the whole, it's a very exciting best of 3, maybe one that is harder to read by virtue of the way that we've seen these teams as we've set that up, but outside of that, I mean, is there any sort of advantage you give to either one?
Ooh, okay, so I think that patch advantage is something that we really do have to focus on, because we are on patch 12.8. That means, on the scale of all the reworks that we seem to be getting basically every other patch, we do have Rengar. That's an important one, because in the top lane, that's something that Gatsu for 0-2 actually plays, and they said that they played it before the first time around. In the group stage, we were on a patch pre-rework, so that means they didn't get to flex that. I'm very curious to see if they are confident enough to pull it out in the top lane. Secondly, we have the Wukong. Again, both the jungle and the top laner from 0-2 play that. I'm sure that it's been prevalent enough that we will see Pessigod at least prioritize it, whether it be forcing bans onto it or at very least prepping it themselves. But it is another one of those champions that, with a series of buffs, feel like 0-2 are going to be coming in very confident, at least for their top side right now.
Yeah, certainly are for their top side, but let's not forget about Buddy on Pessigod, because Buddy certainly held their own versus some of the premier top laners in their group.
Absolutely, they were also able to take it to the best of them, and I'm very curious to see, because it was actually Gentleman Hero playing the Gwen, one of the few times we didn't see them on Fiora on stream, possibly going to be the MVP of the tournament depending on how their form continues, and Buddy locks in the Poppy, another hyper buff champion right now, having a lot more cooldown chipped off of that W so they can keep the steadfast presence up and stop the dashes more. They kind of just won lane. Like, it went a bit in Gentleman's Hero's favour like we expected, but Buddy came back, got a solo bolo up there, and overall impressed us hands down. So against, again, even competition, I'm curious to see if this is going to be the area where Pessigod can look for that one-upment on the enemy team.
Yeah, and of course this is an element we're not entirely too sure about, so the expectation isn't necessarily there, because simply put, we just haven't seen that from the team. We just couldn't do it from the group stage by virtue of the format. But this part where we have that best of 3, as we discussed, we get to see a little bit more, and hopefully the best of this Italian seed.
You ever play like Top Trumps when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, you know, the collecting cards and all the like,
exactly.
Little stats and everything, yeah.
And you'd like say, oh, I want to compare this score, and then you'd slap it down and see if you have the higher one. That's kind of how it feels when we do all this prep for these teams, we have everything coming in, and then we're getting ready. It's like, but I know I've seen this player actually go. I know I've seen this team work. But it's all just theory crafting until we find out on the day, because you may not be considering, how is their form? They've already had to do a series. If you are, I believe it was 0-2, had to do a series to get here, taking down the Irish seed and knocking them into losers bracket, whereas Pessigod, they got a bye into this point. So this is their first set of games for the day. So a lot of different factors that we need to really keep in consideration for this best of 3, because it all goes to pivot. Well, maybe they're tired, etc, etc.
Exactly, and we should be ready for the draft very soon. Getting prepared to see exactly what happens into that one between the two teams. Here we go. Zach
Okay.
already gone from the field.
Yeah. All right, fair. That's understandable. And we do get a counter ban in the jungle, removing Nebula's Viego, taking their comfort pick away. Question is now, where do the enabling junglers lie? I want to find out about the Volibear, first of all. The Wukong is removed, that's important. But also, we saw Gorny pull out a lethality crit Xin that actually proved to be very effective. So I'm curious to see how much scouting Pessigod have done and if they put any priority towards that one.
Keep getting junglers banned out. Right now it is all in the jungle, recognizing that both Gorny and Nebula are big facilitators for that team, for their teams respectively. Right now, I mean, I see it just going the same way if both teams are seeing this as the main thing. But any other expectations with all of this banned out? I mean, there's still definitely priority junglers available.
I don't think they're going to ban the Orianna, right? Because both of these teams highly praise the Orianna. And okay, we see the Seraphine ban. Makes sense. The enemy team has a couple Seraphine players. And the Kai'Sa is actually a return. That's interesting. For me, the way that reads is that Pessigod want to go in, and 0-2 do not want them to get away with that.
It does reveal a little bit in terms of the way they want to play, but again, we're just going to see the blind Ahri, I imagine. Right now, just an amazing blind pick, just for the example. I mean, we kind of saw it last game, and the ability to just be able to match and provide utility to your team whilst doing good damage. Kind of just a jack of all trades, but a very good one.
Okay, so a couple picks that are still open that we should look into. The Veigar is something that I'm curious to see. It was banned away in our previous series to enable that Ahri to come out on the first pick. It makes her life very difficult in team fights, to say the least. And it is something that Toibu could look towards. They still have their signature Orianna up, as we will get Pakeko locking in the Jhin. We expect them to go towards it, but I didn't think it would be this quickly.
Still certainly showing their cards, saying that this is the utility, this is how we want to play for. It's still going to be the big carry of our team, but not necessarily in that traditional format. I mean, we're probably going to be wanting to see this followed up with some more proactive or more picks with more agency, not necessarily proactivity, but more agency in the solo lanes.
Okay, we get the Diana. I think that means we might be getting a Diana-Yasuo combo. It's something that 0-2 have played multiple times. Question is, seeing just that part, how confident are you, Pessigod? How much are you going to put your hands down and say, yeah, it's probably going to be that. Let's lock in the Poppy now and be sure. Because otherwise, you're going to start losing some of those bans in the second rotation. I'm waiting.
Is one of the options. Ezreal is a really nice, safe ADC to pair with this, but a champ that comes to mind when you're trying to counter this sort of composition is something like the Camille, where you're just able to sort of Hextech ultimatum the Yasuo as Diana goes in and prevent him from being able to follow up with his own ultimate. And if I look at Buddy, he's a pretty prolific Camille player.
Not just Buddy, though. It is Gatsu as well. Both of these top laners love a bit of that Camille, and they both currently have Ignite TP selected. I know that doesn't necessarily mean much to you, but both of these top laners are very heavy into that style. They do not care about the flash summoner, they care about killing their opposition, as we do get the Karma, presumed to go in the bottom lane, but we have seen it flex to top once before in the tournament.
Instead, feeling like they can match this no matter what comes through. That will be the Yasuo hover, and almost certainly locked in with the way your composition is going. Everything points towards it, along with the curtain call, to support that. And right now, going into the second ban phase, what I'm expecting to see is just sort of banning out typical counters to this sort of thing. Maybe it is a Camille, maybe it is the Poppy, or anything else that might inhibit the Diana or Yasuo from doing their job.
And I just love how we were looking at the final bans of the first rotation, and it looked like both of these teams were going for the exact opposite styles we've seen them adopt. We have got 0-2 going all in. They want these engage tools. They want to be able to get onto the enemy backline and kill them. They have the Jhin to facilitate that and the divers so far, but what else can they find to pair with it? I think something like the Rakan would do them very well, but it would forfeit a lot of that priority in the bottom lane. So, looking over to the other side, Pessigod. They have got the ability to play a very safe bot lane with this presumed Karma Ezreal. Still got a minor amount of flexibility, but with junglers still open, it does start to beg the question of what they're going to pick up as 0-2 realize that and get rid of the Volley Bear.
Alright, taking down one of those picks that Nebula has really shown themselves on. It was that Orianna Volibear combination that they managed to do. Obviously, the Orianna wouldn't necessarily come through here, but Volibear, a pick from Nebula, is proficient with and could certainly be a thorn in the side for 0-2 if Nebula manages to be proactive enough in the early roaming alongside the Ahri.
Okay, so we see Camille actually make it through to the second rotation. Now, will 0-2 just lock in a support here? It would make the most sense, but then the issue is you could see yourself getting flexed on by that Karma on the enemy team. We know this is something that Pesigod have used multiple times over, and it does start to wager the question of how much do you value getting priority in this bottom lane. They will just pick up the very standard, very fair Leona dive to facilitate with that Jhin.
Yeah, nice to keep that topside counter pick, so if the Camille does end up coming through, then you can at least play the best matchup that you have available to you as Gatsu. So keeping that advantage in the top side, it depends on how Pesigod really want to match this, whether they want to match mid-jungle or something else, because right now I see a very versatile comp.
There it is.
So it will be the Poppy.
Absolutely. 3 dashes on the enemy team, or 3 dash champions. Some of them have more than one, as... Okay.
Oh, you throw it in the jungle. Okay, that's definitely possible. I mean, Malphite into very heavy AD with the Jhin Yasuo right there. Going to get a lot of armor value, as well as providing a source of hard engage for your team.
That is quite the hover.
That works too.
I think this one works better. They lock in the Gragas Poppy, and the reason I think this works better is you can keep it as a potential flex pick. As one of the biggest issues of Poppy going into top lane is you can lock in champions like Darius and then just smack them to pieces. Now, you have all the power for Pesigod to decide which matchup will be which. I'm expecting it to be boring tanks in the top lane in the form of Gragas versus Ornn, and then in the jungle, Nebula on this Poppy. I want to see if they go for the Predator, because if they do, they can really dictate the pace of this game.
Right. Both comps lined up, very, very different sort of playstyles. I mean, 0-2 looking for this more teamfight-centric comp in some sort of way. Everything is really pointing towards that mid-jungle of Gorni and Toibu. If Yasuo isn't able to pretty much execute in fights, then it kind of seems like your damage of your composition falls flat.
We saw plenty of times Diana-Yasuo compositions fall apart because they weren't able to follow up on each other, but something that 0-2 does have in their favour is they at least have the extra ability to go for knockups off of that Ornn ultimate. I'm very excited to see how both of these teams can actually execute on that, because you are very correct there that 0-2's comp falls apart if Toibu and Gorni are behind, which means that on the other side, the obvious question is, how is Pesigod going to attack that? Well, they've done amazing work so far because Ahri, the charm interrupts dashes, Poppy, the steadfast presence that got super buffed, interrupts dashes. The Gragas disrupts these fights and makes it very difficult for you to actually maintain DPS after you go in with the ultimate combos. And in the bot lane, the whole point of Ezreal Karma is that they're not on the same screen as you. You and I are not the same. You stay over there and I am going to continue to throw poke across a wall.
Although what is worth saying is you do have all these tools. I mean, it is going to be really watching how this Poppy interacts, maybe trying to shut down Toibu. But that Wind Wall timer, if you have that ability available as the Yasuo, you can really shut down a lot of the tools that Pesigod want to provide you. Ahri can't safely throw a charm out if you have that because you can deny it. Karma Ezreal poke could also get denied for multiple members of the team potentially if that's available. So watching that cooldown specifically might be able to be the key in certain fights.
I'm going to double down on that because there's also the Poppy and Gragas ultimates, these main disruption tools, because one of the reasons that Poppy does so well into a Yasuo is not only because they get to interrupt the dashes, but also when the Yasuo goes in and starts the ultimate, they can't win wall in the process of that. So Poppy could just channel the ultimate and chuck it down as the Yasuo animation finishes, bop them out of the fight, and then go for it after. But if we see proactive win walls like that, then Nebula is going to be forced to really just have to find some abstract angles, I'll say, if they want to be getting away with this one.
Yeah, certainly showing both teams right here, showing the capacity to draft and play in very different ways than what we've seen before, showing the versatility and perhaps the reason why both of them are here in the first place, because they have defeated other opponents in their regional leagues. And right here, it's two very different styles than what we might have seen.
And I'm very glad to be able to tell you that neither team has a super exponential scaling advantage, and if a team falls behind, the game is just over. They both have great comeback mechanisms, and as we get into the game, we are now seeing an invade by the looks of it from Pessigod. It might be a counter invade, but until we see how far they walk, we do not know.
I think Gatsu's gonna spot them out. Yes, he will, as the Ornn. They're still gonna go for it. I mean, you're gonna get the ward in the tri-bush then instead, and leave.
And so I want to see, there we go, 0-2, they're walking forward, they want to get some deep vision if possible, knowing that everybody was just committed up to the top side for Pessigod. Getting any wards down right now will pay off exponentially, because you'll know when Nebula's on your side of the map. Ooh, Metis. Yeah, they'll get out here, they're fine.
Minions have spawned.
Alright then. Standard level 1, the warding is down on the bot side. So we'll be aware that Nebula will be starting around here. So that is that slight vision advantage for 0-2. But as for the lanes, I wouldn't expect to see much volatility or action in the early phases.
My question is then, what will Gorni do? Because you have all the info in the world you could need, and there is very much the possibility that they could just walk in and invade the top side of Pessigod. As soon as we see which way Nebula goes, if they're going to full clear or if they're going to walk straight to Raptors, that immediately pivots the decision making. Is this Diana not very strong in these early levels, not wanting to make any risks whatsoever?
Absolutely. Decent clear speed, admittedly, so that is something you do like to do. Try to farm up as quickly as you can till you get that Moonfall, as it is the all-important ultimate for the champion. So the invade is a possibility, depends if you want to do that or not. A little bit of a skirmish in the bot side. Wait and see how the jungle paths play out.
And looking at the keystone runes this game, there's at least two I want to really focus on. First of all, we got the Glacial Augment on Metis, which means that when they do go in, Sirius has their work cut out for them for Pessigod in the support role. They are not going to be able to get away, because the biggest issue is... Oh, hold on.
Slow.
Okay, so the biggest issue is that the slow persists and just sits on the floor. You can't do that to Piscolo, because like we just saw there, thank you for the working example, Pessigod, is the Ezreal can hop out. Karma, not so lucky.
Oh, Toibu taking some trades right here. Mazu does have that extra range advantage in the early versus the Yasuo, so if Toibu mispositions, he might get traded on a little bit, as Buddy gets very low here, taking that Grasp and the Brittle proc.
Yatsu has Ignite, by the way, so they can't really get out here. But can they kill?
They kill. Nebula is ready. Gatsu looking for it. Ignite goes down onto Buddy. He will get the first blood, but it will be traded back by Nebula.
When I said that Gatsu was a TP Ignite player, I really didn't think they would take it to the Ornn-Gragas matchup, but showing the dominance already, they don't need Spellbook. They don't want to have to wait 6 minutes to get Ignite. No, no, no. They're going straight from the bat with it. As it will pay off. That minion wave looks like it was able to crash up in the top side. So now it's going to come back. Gatsu will be able to play a relatively safe time, not having to burn their TP. And now both top laners begin the snooze fest of farming up their tier stacks.
Exactly that. Waiting for those Fimbulwinter to be completed. Two extremely powerful items on each champion, providing that shielding, as somehow Sirius has gotten dived and killed by 0-2.
Okay. Alright, well, I know we said that they needed to be aggressive with this comp, but they are really doubling down on that as Nebula. Hand look mid here, I like this a lot. Toibu is far up there, only level 5. And they seem to almost know. They don't necessarily need to have seen the Poppy to understand which side it is, and that's part of the value that comes with that level 1 ward, is you know which side the enemy jungler is going to be on, so you can play much safer than you otherwise get the opportunity to.
Yeah, playing in the correct pocket there, good recognition. Noticing that Gorni has just been in bot side, you did see Nebula make a play on Buddy, so it's very likely that Poppy's there waiting in the top side, so playing bottom pocket, extra safety there, allows you to be able to push the wave in and stay alive.
Early itemization choices. We do see that Nebula is going to go for that Chem Tank build as opposed to the Divine Sunderer, meaning that they are a bit more of a utility champion in this game, not wanting to be anything to do with carrying. Fair enough. You're going to be carrying off of just stunning the enemy team. They only got a few key members, so you break that apart and you break the enemy comp.
Going to mid again, once more Toibu playing on the correct side alongside his jungler. Metis here to support, gonna clear out that ward, recognition of the fact that Nebula and Sirius are available in the mid lane, and just gonna back out.
Despite us getting a few early kills, this is a lot more of a controlled game. This is a very passive moment right now. I'm not going to say a passive game, because I'm pretty sure Gatsu is going to look for a solo kill in the tower once they hit level 6.
Gonna hit each other and stack their grass, but there's definitely potential for lethal. Gatsu going for it, but he's gonna tank up a tower shot. That minion not able to kill Buddy, but Gorni is now here. 1E will do the trick, and there it is.
So well played by Gatsu on this Ornn. For a player that we were looking at saying they are all about these Ignite TP top laners, the Camilles, things like that, we are getting a completely different side of them. Well, I say different side of them, it's more like a different shade. TP. Yeah, it's a different shade of them. Now Nebula is going to start the dragon up. Got that free priority from the bottom lane, but will there be a counter attack? Looks like no.
Yeah, too early in the game. It is the first dragon. It's not too big of a deal, especially when you don't see anything that is necessarily worth going for. It's generally when you see Cloud early or a good individual Drake that you want to be prioritizing it. In this case, it is an Ocean, so not too big of a deal. So giving it away in a situation where you don't have priority in either mid or bot side is just a safe play to make.
Now, I said before the game that I wanted Nebula to be Gun Predator, so they can have an early pressure on it. They went for the phase rush. It's a completely fine choice for the Poppy, and it means that when you do go in, you're able to get back out. But right now, it means that until you get towards that first item, it's very difficult for Nebula to actually force things. They just have to be there reactively, and hasn't been able to get the better end of the enemy team of doing that yet.
Alright, continuing to clear up the slight gold advantage in favour of 0-2 just off the back of a few plays. Nebula looking onto Metis for a little bit. Piscolo able to follow up slightly, but looking for the dive, and it will be responded by the TP on the Ornn. Metis still going in. I'm not sure you wanted that, as Nebula's able to provide the flank. The TP got cancelled by Buddy, and that means they should be able to get the collapse. Piscolo going to pick up the kill with that auto, and a very nicely executed dive in the end by Pessigod.
A lot of summoners invested, and is Gatsu going to be without their TP? Like you said, nothing really burnt from Buddy, in the contrary. There's a lot of heavy skirmishing up in that top lane. I see Gorni walking up there. I feel like this is going to be another kill collected.
Have to be so careful right now as the Gragas, but as the Ornn, you're not in the healthiest position even at the moment after taking some of those trades, so I'm not sure if the angle is there, but the one thing that is worth noting is that Gorni is at a big farm advantage.
Most definitely being able to leverage that early kill for just complete dominance in the lane. If they're able to get that TP off, then easily would have flipped the bot lane dive back into their own favour. Instead, going to use that pressure for this Rift Herald. Dear God, don't fight it, Pessigod. This is as bait as it could get.
Buddy just given a vision, scouting out, gonna throw a cask and dip out of there. I'm also interested to see exactly where Gorni puts that one. Maybe it's just to try and get priority and some money and plate gold into Toibu in the mid lane. I would imagine that's the best idea, but for now, just going to go path down to bot side to clear those camps.
I think you could also argue putting in the bot lane just to try and get this Jhin Leona out of the lane would work, because Yasuo is going to be completely fine just existing, chucking out the wind walls periodically in a side lane. For the moment, they are having the better end of the matchup, as Toibu, our air quote control mage mid laner, so he says, is having a great time on some of their signature picks.
Certainly indeed one of the few picks that is not a control mage in their arsenal of proficiencies. And there it is, going to clear out topside as well. Nice little advantage, but really not too much. Kind of just waiting right now for these objectives to spawn, some items to be acquired for both teams to start unleashing their full colours.
Now, oh, hold on.
As I say that, we see Metis taking an awful lot of damage in the bot side. Gorny going to follow up with the Moonfall Sirius getting dangerously low. Fourth shot will not be the one to execute. Instead, it will be Diana. Piscolo taking a lot as well. If that connects, yep, there we go. Exhaust, not even exhaust, I mean cleanse, having to be popped for Piscolo.
It's overall going to be a 1-0. No dragon to take though, so it's not going to result in too much. Just a lot of cooldowns being used. All of the summoners for Pessigod are now down, meaning that's a pretty good place to repeat gank, especially when you have this Diana Yasuo that can move down. The dive potential has not looked juicier than right now.
Only has all the backs coming off on the side 0-2. Still advantage to their side, looking really good right now. Gorny influencing the entirety of the map. And Pessigod kind of slowly bleeding a little bit, but right now at 10 minutes it's not too much of an issue. But from what I'm seeing, they really need to come alive a little bit more, because if they keep playing in this way, as we see this top deficit for example, it's not looking very good.
Really like that idea from Buddy. They were trying to get Gatsu under tower after taking aggro, but Nebula should be able to pick this one up. Remember, it's a no flash on.
They talked about the deficit in mostly the CS department. Gatsu ends up dying instead, so a little bit of a return play, and as another return play of the return play, Akeko picks up a kill on the Karma.
And now with all the Uno reverse cards used, this will be Gorny looking to come down to bot lane, forcing Piscolo all the way back. As I think they're just able to see it. The Rift Herald going to be used to collapse this tower, turn it into a dragon. Very clean stuff right now coming out from 0-2.
Alright then, a lot of XP and gold denied in that bot side. Able to get 1 or 2 waves into the Jhin, as well as what I imagine will be that plate gold. Yeah, there it is, all coming through. 4-0-2. That is a sizable advantage right now.
Metis is looking. They do have the Hex Flash, so they don't have to commit anything to go for this, but they might get charmed up if they went too deep. Very conservative placement.
Nebula there on the backside, but likewise Gorny is also present, and therefore both teams have this sort of standoff, which they can't do much about.
Hooray! They actually went to the dragon. I really thought this was going to turn into just a standoff in the mid lane over nothing. Gorny, far too efficient of a jungler to go for that, as now this is just going to continue to accelerate the lead of 0-2. And which soul is it these teams are going to be playing for? Infernal.
A lot of extra damage potentially, maybe adding that extra oomph. The Moonfall combo. Sirius looking for another one, and Zagatsu constantly pushed up in this lane, but you have less damage than you did beforehand with the Poppy. And Gatsu is very healthy, going to return it with the Call of the Forge God. Brittle onto Sirius. Metis is here. Maybe you can kill the Karma with the Solar Flare. That is the kill secured.
And the thing is, Toibu actually TP'd in to save their top laner, but they really weren't needed because both the supports have been everywhere but bot so far. Currently, mid lane being sieged up by Pessigod, looking for some kind of return play. They're going to be able to collect on one plate, but Gorny has the wombo combo.
Who's there? It's possible. They just need to land it. Flash available. Do you want to pull the trigger? Gone back into the wall, knocked up Charmed, you don't end up doing anything. Gorny, too hesitant, goes in, eventually Flash Moonfall to secure it, but it almost feels like that was just a little bit too late.
Such indecision from 0-2, not wanting to go for it, but then feeling like they have to pull the trigger to get something back. Gonna be a lot of shutdown gold going over to Pessigod. They're gonna be quite happy with that course of events at least, as it will be a net 2 for 2 on the map, but overall, going to be more important kills going over between that mid-jungle duo. The key points, the main area, we said 0-2 need to be ahead in this draft, because if they're not alive, the comp kind of doesn't exist.
And you know what we talked about? If they don't get that combo off in an important fight, well, the damage just isn't there. Toibu goes down before Gorny's able to get that Moonfall off, because he was sort of sitting in behind saying, oh, do we go in? Is it worth doing? And then in the end, you just lose out on the play because you lack the damage.
Ooh. There's going to be a lot of damage down onto... Okay,
hold on through. Metis going forward. Pisco still living on a sliver of health. And as such, Metis is going to be the one. Wait, the Gale Force instead picks up one for Sirius. The sniper shot not quite there on the Deadly Flourish. And it will just be the 1-for-1 into a pause.
Wow, that was tense. As Metis dives in past the support to try and collect the kill onto Piscolo. But the ultimate did not manage to collect. The Ignite was cleansed away by Pisclo, and while you managed to get both their summoners, it is just a trade of supports in the mid lane. As now, do have this pause. We have a couple of moments to call a break. I'm pretty sure when we come out of this pause that Pakeko's probably dead.
Yeah, a little bit of time to sort of digest the game state, I suppose. Both teams right now having one Drake on each side, and then the goal advantage being in 0-2. But we saw it there, in that mid-gank. The indecision from Gorny ended up meaning that Pessigod benefited massively.
And I'm struggling to remember which teams it was. I don't think it was either the ones on our screen, but we had this exact same scenario earlier on in the tournament. I don't know if you can remember what I'm talking about, but there was a Gragas on one side and a Diana Yasuo on the other. And the whole thing for that was whenever the Gragas was there, they disrupted the Diana Yasuo and the comp fell apart and they won. And in the end, we're getting a very similar run back this time around.
If I remember correctly, it was between one of the Spanish seeds and Turkish seeds in Group A.
That's it, it was
Bobcat
Sulugad, you're right.
Yes. So it wasn't these two teams specifically, but it was that same dynamic of the Gragas team in Urugad being able to literally store out the game because the Diana Yasuo just had such a hard time actually managing to find those moments.
So, question is now, for 0-2, back into the immediate pressure, is we are in the first game of this best of 3. All the marbles, can they take it away?
X-Flash over Arcane Shift, nicely timed, but there's just too much follow-up to keep Piscolo alive there.
Alright guys, I was asking if you can execute on the combo. I didn't necessarily mean you have to execute on the combo on one guy. Poor Piscolo, actually going for the Divine Sunderer Ezreal, trying to be a bit tankier. This option got all but abandoned for a long time. What do you think of it?
I'm really not too much of a fan, but I can kind of see when you have an Ornn giving extra sort of resistances being able to burn that one down, but I'm going to hold that fort because Pakeko is going to go down in the mid lane, and Gorny might be next on the platter, but no, Pessigod decided to not go any further forward.
They're picking up a massive bit of shutdown gold for them. This Poppy is going to run riot on the enemy team. I'm curious to see what they're going to build in 2 seconds. So many good options available, as it will cure this mid tower. On the side lane, Toibu's getting a bit of pushing done, but they are going to have to back. A minute 15. Right, reset time, maybe.
Oh, he misses the ult. Really nice sidestep there from Gorny, and that allows them to get the kill onto Nebula. Nice little bit of gold. And I guess that's sort of just a mis-execution, maybe an overstep from Pessigod trying to go for that.
Yeah, I was saying reset, but I didn't mean, like, reset to the death chamber. That wasn't the loot I was going for on that time around. As now, Gatsu keeping these 2 members of Pessigod in mid lane. They're going to have to run back up to top as their tower is taking a beating, in the sense of it's already gone.
Alright. 16 minutes. Again, the advantage still stays in 0-2's favour when it comes to raw gold value. But as far as the fight's been playing, as far as the entire game state goes, incredibly even game. It is on the execution still, as we've been sort of going on over and over and over again about. But it is really the key to the success of both teams.
If we think about the kind of nerves aspect of how both of these teams are feeling, this is their second shot at life in the tournament, for both of them. Pessigod, having not played a game yet in this last chance qualifier. 0-2, having already won a series 2-0 to be here.
Collapse is available, Piscolo. Gonna take a lot of damage, Pakeko opening up the curtain, immediately picking up that one, and then the Ornn Horn onto free. Gonna provide a lot of damage for 0-2. Can they get anything more out of it? That's 1 kill, but they are tanking tower. 2 kills from Gorny going on the dive. Gonna have to go golden for the time being, and that means he is gonna go down. Hopefully, oh no, the flash away! Stays alive. Matsu looking for it, and that is enough damage from the Ahri to pick up the shutdown. 2 for free in the end.
Massive amount of gold influxed over, and it is a 1 jungler to 0 right now. But there's a person advantage for 0-2, and that's all that matters right here, is because the Jhin can effectively do a smite with their 4th shot. Looks like it will be a trade of mid tower for Dragon. Are Pessigod even able to get it though?
Metis going in for it, maybe trying to look for the return. Nebula and Mazu maybe overstepping there in mid lane, trying to get that tower in return. Toipu charging up the Nado, going on to Mazu. Not going to follow that one up, but Pessigod getting a little overzealous.
play lasted for so long, the bot lane has respawned from Pessigod and are back on the map, able to defend their mid lane tower. But overall, massive, massive win for 0-2. Able to not even necessarily get off the combo, they just got off staggered fights bit by bit, taking advantage of their knockups and their CC to really lock down the key members of Pessigod in net. It went well for them, went very, very well.
Alright then. See if they can rein back on that a little bit, because in the fight overall, Pessigod managed to sort of stall it out and win, kind of, based on the fact that they sort of had the worst start to the fight. The engage was that good from 0-2, but then making the play afterwards to try and go for mid in reaction was just a little bit too much. So maybe the idea is to rein back on the aggression a little bit as Piscolo oversteps a little bit in the mid lane. Nebula now on return onto Metis, TP coming through.
Everybody is here. We have got the ARAM enabled. Matsu is on the flank though, but Gatsu sees them.
All on Forge God only onto the Gragas, trying to snipe Piscolo. The Keko is Mazu. Onto it, Brittle, unstoppable, not quite enough to keep Gatsu alive there, a little bit in too deep once the engage got blown, and it's a lovely reaction from Pessigod.
Both of these sacrificial tanks in the top lane are the first ones down in most of these fights, and that's just because both teams have such good ways to lock them down and kill them if they're out of position, particularly for Gatsu, who is, you know, flashless, taking this Ignite for lane, really does not offer the same dividends in fights. As now, we reach a bit of a lull state, I will say hesitantly. We should reach a bit of a lull state at this point in the game, with no objective up on the bot side. The Baron is available. Both of these teams have good tools for controlling it, with the Ezreal Karma being able to poke out anybody that walks into the pit. And then on the other side, oh my goodness, every time.
He's managed to land these onto Ezreal a lot, to be fair.
Yeah, Metis has been getting the upper hand, which is the kind of mental win you want in a series, because if you could really zone out the enemy who's playing such a safe champion like the Ezreal, and continue to get them, that is the kind of stuff that lasts game to game. You're right, buddy.
For the farm ups, Buddy gonna disengage the play with the Cascorni. Probably gonna end up using the Moonfall. There it is. Call of Forge God in return. Probably gonna get the kill there. Yep, a little bit too much damage between the two of them. Nice little response there on Buddy, stepping slightly too far in the lane.
And while 0-2 have not got the same degree of poke, they can threaten this Baron whenever they want. The Diana Yasuo damage is insane to it. And then the ability to turn off the objective is also quite significant, as they will lose this mid tower, but what will they get in return? I think this is a completely fine angle to look at that Baron.
Maybe is instead they're going for the chase. Gorny on the hunt, gonna go.
No Moonfall.
Vision that out. 1 minute 30 on Drake, you can't really go for that, and now that you've dedicated the time to go down this side, I don't really think a Baron is on the cards either.
Quietly, we've got Masu on this Ahri doing very well. 10 Magi stacks, 4-0 and 2, 2 items, but I feel like they felt a bit invisible in these fights. I don't know, is that just me? Because every time I see them get a good lockup and that's it.
Well, instead, Nebula's going to be the one getting locked up because they're dead in the mid lane. Curtain Call trying to snipe out Sirius. If you can stall for a little bit of time, maybe Gorny can get the kill. Not quite enough. Also, Gatsu's in a 2v1 on the top side and he's going to go down.
Thanks for the extended zoom, because action never ceases in this game. As now, we do have Diana and Yasuo here, but there's no ults on either of them.
Go for another fight. They really want this mid turret. TP response from Matsu. That Ahri coming in through the back. Piscolo looking for it, playing aggressive onto Metis, and Pekeko gonna get rooted up because he used the arcane shift forward. He might die. It's just not enough damage though.
Oh my goodness, 20 seconds until this objective spawns, and the members of 0-2 are chunked out. The members of Pessigod are chunked out, but Masu is still here with stopwatch. Ultimate is nearly back up. As soon as that Spirit Rush is enabled, this fight is going to explode.
The Eternal Skirmish. The problem is 0-2, Pekeko, Metis having to stay around on low HP for this fight. They really want the presence to help secure the Drake. They want to be stacking those. It puts you onto Soul Point. If you get this one, you're at a slight disadvantage.
Poppy ult's available. There's... Hold on a minute.
Speaking of a disadvantage,
The
you get a
dragon,
kill
the
in the
dragon.
mid lane, but then the dragon, now that they know that they aren't there, you can go if you are Pessigod, and they do that indeed. Nebula going to get very, very low, but Pekeko not got the attack speed to get the kill. He might be able to stay alive, but the Ornhorn sniping out Mazu, staying golden, managing to just about get the kill with Piscolo coming through. But Pekeko eventually going to get that one in the end, and 0-2 seem to be the victors.
Piscolo is silently hiding right now. Nebula might be able to get out. They are just tanky enough, but I don't know about this Piscolo. They are coming. Nebula does have the smite. If they can get in range, they can secure it, but I don't know if they can even stick around for that long.
Trouble wall, curtain call. I just don't think you can stay here. Maybe your best shot is to try and ult this one. No, gonna go for Pekeko instead.
Oh my god, what is happening?
That was so close.
Oh, this fight is ridiculous. I call it a fight. That's the game. This game is just one elongated team fight that never ends. We're playing a battle royale right now.
I really took the meaning of multiplayer online battlefield to the literal meaning of it, I guess.
Okay, let's pay stock to what just happened there. Matsu, they got shut down. A lot of gold went over to 0-2. They also burnt their stopwatch. Very significant because it means that they are going to be slowed down for quite a while. Their damage curve has been put off, but if you look at the enemy team, no magic resist to speak of outside. Okay, never mind.
Going for it again. Wants the engage again onto Sirius. Going to get executed by Jin. 0-2 with another pick.
It's a 3-item Jin. You have to be very careful. He can reach you from a long way away with that rapid fire. As the Baron is started up, this is what we're talking about, the 0-2. It looks like the play from Pessigod is just try and kill Gatsu, but I don't know if that'll do much for you here.
That's the leave.
Nebula has ult.
You need to respond to this Baron though. TP's really late. It's on 3,000.
Oh, the stun.
Okay, well, Gorny gets to secure Ornhorn onto 2-0-2, looking for the engage. They get it with the Yasuo. That's the wombo combo. That's the fight one. That's the Baron. There is nothing Pessigod can do about this as 0-2 starts tunneling down the mid lane. That's another Nebula, the last one standing. Rooted down. Very nice knock-up in response, but there is no hope for Pessigod after that fight.
The 0-2 comp coming alive, punishing around the Baron. Not able to approach into them, not able to poke them out. As it just never ends!
Into Sirius, beautiful follow-up. That's the power of the Jin, and that's the ace and the game for 0-2.
Absolute dominance. They are looking like a machine right now. Coming off of a flat 2-0, they are looking to do it again. They won't be ending the game right here, but with Baron secured, Dragon's Soul up for them in 2 minutes 50. I feel like this is an inevitability for 0-2 to be leading the series.
Absolutely. Going to play it safe, obviously, here with the respawn timers. I do feel like there was the potential to end with all 5 members and a wave up. But no, instead going to say, let's not throw it on that base. We have the open base now with that inhibitor mid. All we need to do is win one more fight, and we're absolutely capable of doing.
3 Ornn items completed. A 12k gold lead, which is realistically a 15k. A Baron buff secured. 2 looking to be 3 dragons ahead. 0-2 are looking insane. And this is what they can do against a fair competition? I am very impressed.
Oh. That happened.
Yeah. Piscolo's gone. Bot lane tower's going to get sieged up. We may not even get to the dragon as Toibu. Alright, we're going to need to see some fancy feet if you're not just going to get dropped here.
Playing on the edge, Nebula Sirius looking for the engage without Matsu. Do you have the damage? Poppy can certainly do a lot. Exhaust gonna go through. Toibu knocked up, gonna just kill Sirius instead. Yasuo just a little bit too powerful for Nebula to handle right now.
It's all over as Pessigod are gonna drop the first game. How on earth do you recover from a shellacking like this?
And there is that mental element going into game 2. You know what happened this game, and it just felt like even a slow death for Pessigod. The response needs to come through, and the question is, what will that response be?
Not able to break apart the Diana Yasuo combo enough times over. They had a comp that needed to keep the enemy at arm's length, but they were just getting hugged non-stop. Pessigod dropping their first game that we see in this last chance qualifier. Remember, we're in the upper bracket, but that does not mean that they do not want to be advancing forward, because it's only 2 series wins away from those top 4 spots for both of these teams. It's very important that they can try and make their way forward.
Absolutely that. You're in a great position going into the rest of the best of 3 now if you're 0-2. The confidence is there. And this time, I'm hearing that we do have replays for this game, so we get to relive a few of those exceptional moments coming out of both teams.
And there were a lot of them. I am astounded that this replay reel is not going to be the length of the game, as we see a lot of pressure both sides. Gorny just comes around to collect this one, and it felt like the tune of the early game was Gorny just gets to come in and sneak a kill. They get to come bot and sneak a kill. They get to go everywhere, and they just gradually snowballed to the point that when you look at this Dyna scoreboard, you have to do a double take. I love this play right here, in concept, not executed ideally from both teams. They managed to get out with just a trade of the supports. Overall, though, it was pretty much from this moment on that it became a 0-2 domination.
So darn close. You know, if the Moonfall doesn't succeed, you always have the Ornn Horn in the back to provide the knockup for the Yasuo. You know, the fallback strategy of the Ornn engage. And kind of just that immovable threat, you know, in the top side. Gatsu, having taken a few deaths early on in the game from overextending, still able to provide massive utility and engage in these team fights.
And that stun at the start onto Nebula was so crucial for Metis, completely negating the Keeper's verdict. No way for this Poppy to do anything. And while the pick looked brilliant, it didn't really get a massive amount done. Nebula was, I'm not going to say unable to stop these fights, but when you are the champion that needs to be doing so much, they just weren't able to exert that pressure.
Exactly that, and you just can't help but think, well, you know what, our response to Yasuo Diana, despite it being there in the Gragas and the Poppy, just wasn't sufficient. So maybe we look to play a bit less reactively in draft, and maybe try and make our own team identity. Because it did feel like, yes, you had a cohesive draft, but it was very much in reaction to the opposition.
Exactly. You wouldn't pick these champions if you were just doing a blind draft and this was the comp you wanted ideally. This is only good into the enemy team. So I'm very curious to see how Pessigod could give themselves more agency, give their players more priority, and I think a lot of that is going to come from this bottom lane and changing away from that Ezreal into things like the Ashe and things like the Tristana.
Well, we'll see that in the next game to come. Don't go anywhere, because it will only be a short break away. Check out Twitch Student and Intel in the meantime, as we'll see you in a moment. Hello once more, we are back again with the 2022 Amazon University Esports Masters Last Chance Qualifiers, powered by Twitch Student and Intel. Of course, this is Melvin is on one end and myself, Takua, bringing you the second game of the second best of 3 today, which is between Italy and Czechia, with 0-2, the Czechia seed being 1-0 up.
Very confusing name when there's the potential for 0-2 to 2-0 the series now,
Yes.
as that is a very real possibility based on what we just saw. We had Italy's Pessigod playing a very reactive style in the draft, and that is the first thing we want to see gone.
Absolutely that. When you kind of drafted in a way that, A, lacked proper heavy damage, I mean, you had kind of a really odd damage spread between...
The carries were
Ezreal,
Ezreal, Ari,
Yeah.
right? Says enough.
You played it in reaction to the enemy team. That was the key here, and when you play in a way, when you draft in a way that incentivizes that, you don't necessarily get to make your own plays, and we kind of saw that in the game because you had Poppy that can try and make plays, but then just didn't really have anything to follow up with it.
I think if they had gone down the Predator route, it might have been a different story, but at the end of the day, Poppy just is a reactive jungler. They're one that you pull out in response to an enemy comp to punish specific lanes, and we didn't get enough of that to really justify the pick. So I want to see Nebula getting a pick in the first rotation, because there were at least 5 jungle bans across the board last game. Obviously, removing Gorny's Zac is an important one that I'm sure we'll see as the first ban again from Pessigod. But after that, I want to see them picking the Volibear, not banning it away. Something along those lines, that Volibear-Orianna combo that we see Pessigod pair together so many times throughout the tournament is really important for these teams that have returned from the group stage, earned their way back into the last chance qualifier, and are fighting for their lives now.
And you know what Volibear Oriana is? It's a pretty proactive combination because it's on the Volibear to get that engaged with the ball. And it's that same sort of style, that same sort of idea that 0-2 kind of took to heart with the Diana Yasuo Ornn. You make the engage, you make the play, and the onus is on you to decide the pace of the game.
And one of the other ways that I could see Pessigod adapting was giving the priority to your ADC. You were talking so much about how good Piscolo was and how much of a gold share they got. Can we take a quick gander at that roster again? Because Piscolo for Pessigod, tell me the stat again, what was the number?
Yeah, Piscolo had the third highest gold share of any team in the entire group stage. So a very capable player. When he's enabled, it just seemed like that game that we just saw, Piscolo really wasn't enabled, just kind of sat back on the Ezreal and didn't really do anything.
And some of the champions we can see them pivot towards that haven't been nerfed on recent patches and have actually been buffed for one of them is the Tristana and the Ashe. These are two signature champions for them that I want to see Piscolo heading towards in this draft. They're both pretty safe to blind, especially when there is the option to flex that Tristana over to the mid lane and maybe try and play on the mental factor of the awful Tristana versus Oriana games that Toibu played before, and then the better one. So, you know, we've got a bit of both.
Is the idea, and well, why not, whilst we're at it, go over to 0-2's composition and team for a little bit, as we do have the roster available. Again, the big star here from that last game was Gorny, being able to be so proactive on that Diana and enabling the entire map.
One of the highest ranked players at the tournament, sitting up there as the Zac one trick in GM, but funnily enough, that's just in solo queue. We saw firsthand that their Diana is disgusting, and we talked a lot about the champions from last game, but that doesn't mean that they're all going to be rinse and repeated. Yes, as 0-2, you don't need to change anything, and I'm expecting to see a Diana, if not a Yasuo ban, coming out, because I mean, why would Pessigod play against that again? You didn't have a good answer, so unless you find just a miracle plan that can solve it for the draft of this next game, you've got to be getting rid of that. And already, that's Zac ban, that's Diana ban, and suddenly, we're talking about the 5 jungler bans again.
Do you ever think that Zac is going to get through for Gorny?
I hope not. I mean, I hope so, to see it. Personally, I love watching Zac get played. Will we ever see it? Absolutely not, because it does the same thing with the Yasuo, right? So you have to ban both, or you have to ban Yasuo and then say, yeah, go on, Grandmaster Zac one trick, you can play your Zac, prove it.
I mean, the problem is, it's like, you're talking so much about the Yasuo, and yes, that Diana Yasuo was a big force that game. But this is not the only thing that Toibu can play.
No,
Toibu is by no means a Yasuo one trick. Has a plethora of control mages they are very proficient on, and we did see it again, as we mentioned, into the Tristana last time, that Oriana being such a big pick for this player as well. So if it ends up being the fact that Pessigod say, okay, we didn't like that Yasuo, we're going to ban it or deny it in some sort of way, well, it's not really going to prevent Toibu from doing their job.
And the pick ban gets even more difficult for Pessigod, because we haven't even talked about... We're 12.8, let's take a look at what's happening, because we've got Wukong rework, we've got the Rengar rework, two things that we know for a fact 0-2 want to play, as they are now on the blue side, they get first pickings.
Alright then, we're going to see the Zac banned once more, no Zac for the Gorny, and the Kai'Sa repeated so far. The change in bans we expect to see might be the Zac, but not the Zac, even the Yasuo or the Diana, but we'll wait.
Okay, he's going to still remove that Wukong, very powerful pick on the patch. Now, the question is, what do you remove on this last one? Will it be the Volibear, or will it be that Diana? Is I have to imagine if you leave it open, there's no reason for 0-2 to not pick the Diana. It's still completely fine. It would make you a bit red on what you're going to do. Just the question of how confident Pessigod are feeling, considering they had a full draft to beat Yasuo Diana and lost to Yasuo Diana.
Do you feel like you can handle it this time if you let it through? The deliberation is there. 1 second left. No! It will be the Seraphine instead. We'll repeat of last game. Does 0-2 want to make the run back?
See, the thing is, they don't have to, is the problem. Where they can just lock in a safe ADC if they want, and then they still get to look towards that Yasuo Diana. Because the thing is, the Jhin, Pakeko's best champion, right? It was their first pick last time, and yes, they're on red side, so they had to show the Diana half of the Yasuo Diana at the same time. It's even worse when they're on blue side, because now they get to see two parts of the Pessy God comp before they make a decision.
Alright, taking on it, that gym was the big deal there, and it is worth saying that we did see a massive enabling factor in that gym, that game, and this is kind of what I wanted from Pessiga. We talked about needing to be more proactive, and Lucian Nami is a proactive lane.
Well, if Piscolo can't carry with this one, then they are most definitely not going to be able to overcome 0-2 in this series, as they are fighting for their lives. 0-1 right now for Pessigod. They need to take this win, and they have trying to pull out all the stops to get there. Time to find out if 0-2 find this is still a Yasuo Diana angle. Drumroll.
Okay, taking away the Karma this time. Really nice flex pick this early onto the draft, but can also provide a lot of safety into the burst that Lucian Nami can provide. Instead, see what the rest of the team opts for. Toybu is a proficient Victor, so if you want to play into the scaling elements of this team, you certainly can.
And considering that the Lucian needs to dash in to get most of their damage done, Victor, one of the best control mages in the game for being dashed into, there's a reason there's an iconic Victor into Lucian clip that, funnily enough, doesn't work well when you jump in. Now, obviously we're a couple years away from when that play originally happened, and we have got to find out what Pessigod lock in. It's more proactivity, yay!
Going full into the early game here, J4 being one of those junglers that is able to just constantly gank and annoy you between the dashes with the flag and drag, and then the ultimate cataclysm there. Ornn being banned away as well, saying no, we're not going to let you have that extra scaling in the items, because damn, if an Ornn was to be on the side of 0-2, if you don't get that early lead, it is absolutely doomed.
And double down on that is the fact that you got 3 immobile champions into a Jarvan. The Ornn is one of the few ways that you can break down that wall and try and escape. Now, not really any way out, so this is going to be all on Nebula to look for those proactive plays, which means you want to remove safe top laners who can really avoid being dived, and like you say there, offer that passive scaling option. Gwen is still something that is available on the table. I'm curious to see if either team is going to look towards that, as it would mix it up, as it will just be an Udyr ban, sure.
I mean, Udyr is one of the best stat-checking junglers in the game, but I'm not sure you really want to be stat-checking this early on. Can certainly match the J4 early, I guess. Maybe it's a read onto Gornu.
There it is.
I'm not sure about that one, but with the Aura and a band out.
Makes sense. Both of these mid laners very proficient on the champion, and when you have the Jarvan, why give Jarvan Orianna? So now, you see the Victor. What is your counter-attack, Pessigod? I am so excited to find out what on earth they're going to go towards. Will it be something like LeBlanc? Gonna be LeBlanc.
Okay.
Nailed it!
I was gonna say, the Zoe was buffed recently with those mana costs, meaning that Zoe is just capable of completely spamming Q in lane and not running out of mana. It's actually really significant decrease there for her lane power. But no, LB providing more of that, I guess, pure aggression, because Pessigod are going all in with this draft.
It gives your players the ability to playmake, and that is all you want at this point in the game. If your players are confident for Pessigod, and this is your time to show it, that is all you need, as we do get the counterpick Trundle into that Jarvan locked in for the side of 0-2. It's very, very good at eating up their stats, literally, and then just mitigating the dive in. So if Nebula goes in and doesn't get an initial kill, they are probably dead.
Ah, GP. Ooh. There it is, trying to stall out the top matchup. A really nice blind top pick, does well into pretty much every matchup that you had. There are a few not great ones, but to be honest, right now GP is just in a very strong spot.
It was on 12.7 that he got those super buffs, meaning more passive damage and lower mana cost on the oranges, which if you're getting poked down by your enemy laner, well, kind of just don't anymore. You have the ability to mitigate a lot of that and counter poke, as we will see a Sion locked in for Buddy, hard engage paired with the team. I would say it's the least playmaker we've seen on this comp, but we already had earlier today a Sion put up a damn compelling performance. It was Spirit on DMU that hopefully, if Pessy got her to take us to a game 3, we'll get a repeat of.
Although I can't help but think that into a GP, your life is going to be a lot harder to be able to pull that off in the lane, and rather Buddy's role on this team is kind of just to sit there and be an engage for team fights when he's needed.
Again, another potential victim of the Trundle is Trundle can put up a pillar and stop the Sion ult. So it's actually a really rough champion to play into an enemy Trundle. I can't say I'm particularly happy with that pick overall, but as far as the comp goes, I love what Pessigod have done to just prepare themselves for as much productivity, as much playmaking. I know I've said it a lot of times, but there's a reason for that. It's because we didn't get any of it in the first game from this team.
I mean, that's why they decided, you know what, we're going to shift completely. We clearly recognize that it wasn't good that we were the ones that were having to react to the enemy making plays. We're going to be the one doing that and force them to react, see how that happens instead.
And this is one of the blessed best of 3 format benefits, is we get to see that tangible adaptation from game to game. 0-2 coming in on the front foot right now. They have won 3 games today, 2 in the previous series, 1 now. Question is, will they be making it a swift 4-0 for them on the day and moving on to tomorrow's second half of the last chance qualifier? Remember, both of these teams looking to make those 4 spots in playoffs by the end of it. And right now, it's on the edge for Pessigod. They are on the precipice of falling into the losers bracket.
And yes, there is losers bracket, so it is not the end of the road if you do fall here in this best of 3. But if you win the best of 3, you're in an amazing position to try and secure one of those few UEM playoff spots. And yes, these teams absolutely want that.
And more importantly, I'd say for these two in particular, is look for that vengeance against the teams that put you here in the first place. Both of these teams competed in the group stage, got beaten out in the 2 groups A and B respectively that had 8-0 teams at the top, the likely contenders for the title of this whole tournament. And now, the pair of them are fighting, clawing tooth and nail to make it back.
Here we are, onto Summoner's Rift once more. Will 0-2 secure the 2-0, or will Pessigod claw their way back with this absolutely all-in aggression comp? We're looking towards that bot side and the jungle, seeing exactly how proactive Pessigod can be when they have the tools to do so.
We get relatively standard openings, as we do get Toibu actually going for the Mana Crystal. Level 1, very curious, is going to show a lot of confidence for their laning. Speaking of,
taking a little trade there.
Not going to be too impactful. Normally we expect the Lucian Nami to come online at level 2 and look for that kill threat. Keko and Metis understand this, so they are leveraging their level 1 advantage as much as possible. I really, really like this. They know that this bot lane could get decided at level 2, and they are doing their best to avoid it.
Trying to chip down Sirius is really smart here, because I mentioned this before, Nami has an incredibly low base health pool. Okay health scaling, which means that later on it's not quite as drastic, but at this, level 1, level 2, incredibly low. Chipping down Nami means that Nami can't really afford to be as aggressive or face literal death by doing so.
And I'm actually very curious to see why Pisclo went for the cleanse this game, because the only lockup on the enemy team that I expect you to actually get hit by would be the Jin's Deadly Flourish, because the other hard CC is that of Toibu on the slow field. So this is just going to be to enable them to go for the chase down, get rid of the ignite on them, but outside of that, it gives a lot more laning versatility over to 0-2's bot lane.
So just noticed that the phase rush was the more archaic rune choice was the choice for Toibu there. Gorni attempted to interrupt Nebula with this pillar there as well, not quite enough able to execute on that, so Nebula does get out.
I like the phase rush because it means that if Nebula's not killing you, then you can run away. And while that sounds a bit overly simplified, it's going to be quite important because Toibu's flash is going to be down all the time. Okay, what? Sure.
I'm saying that Buddy might have a hard time in this matchup, but no, absolutely not. Nebula going to flash away though from Gorni. The collapse is available from Mazu if they want it.
He's got more stats than you, my guy.
Sure. Wait, you distortion back in.
What is happening?
Wait, Metis had to flash over as well because Piscolo went... I am absolutely confused and unable to comprehend what is going on because Piscolo is now facing a level 4 Trundle as a level 2 Lucian. Cleanse there, allowing him to get away from the W. Maybe Gorni can get it. Now the response comes in from Pessigod. Serious. Ignite down onto Gorni, but he's so tanky right now with the Karma Shield. Gonna get away, and I have no idea what is going on.
Raid Boss Gorny over here as Nebula. What?
Nebula loves it! The absolute chaos is on the rift right now. Matsu going in again, donated over 3 kills for 0-2. The fiesta in the river finally concluded.
I'm utterly shocked as Pessigod are now 1-3 on the scoreboard. Buddy having a great job, first blood in the top lane, and everywhere else on the map goes absolutely dire.
You know, if I'm top right now, I would just be saying report mid. I have no idea what was going on with that. Regardless of it, it is only 5 minutes, so this is by no means the end of the world.
So I know what they were trying to do, right? Because the thing is, the Pessigod comp isn't necessarily forced to get ahead early, but if you're not, it becomes very difficult, right? Victor's scaling immense. Jhin outranges you, outscales you across the board as well, and then the Trundle just makes everybody's life difficult. So I think that was Pessigod double downing, saying this is do or die. If we do not get ahead off of the back of this, then it's going to be so impossible. If we do get ahead off the back of this, they just play the entire game out cleanly. It's not going to be difficult. All of their champions on Pessigod's side just absolutely stomps with a lead. As, hold on a minute, bit of a skirmish happening top right here. Buddy dipping into the bush. Nebula's around. No flash available on anybody up here bar Buddy.
Looking for it again. Orange is keeping Gatsu healthy. Buddy potentially in lethal range of the GP, but if he can bait it in for Nebula, then that is a kill.
Oh, this is going to be it. He ate oranges and all was not K.
Alright, Nebula available, should be there to pick up the kill. One more auto, there it is. Very nice bait from Buddy, good to land that last knock-up, and that will give them that kill.
Crispy clean, and it puts Nebula back on the right path as this game was falling out of their hands. But hold on a minute, Gorny is actually making their way up to top. Buddy has level 6, they might be able to drift away, but like we said, there's the pillar that just ruins their day.
A flash ultimate, you can either leave or just decide to try and go for wait, the minion wave, yes, the death passive, it's possible.
Oh.
The pillar.
I love that from Gorny.
No.
Yeah, that was really, really good by Gorny, holding the pillar for the entire skirmish. Not expecting the point blank ultimate, I don't think, but had enough stats and the level up to survive it. And all that mattered was the fact that they could shut down the pillar to save themselves at the end. Oh, okay.
Wow. Last game was a little bit slow and here and there, but this game definitely getting the action right from the get-go. Nebula, once again, looking for some sort of gank down in the bot side, but there are 2 traps. Gonna slow it down a lot. Pisclo, half health. Play is disengaged. I think Pakeko wants it though.
They definitely want to walk forward because knowing the enemy just burnt all their cooldowns, Pakeko is the most confident person on the map right now. Both summoners up on this Jhin, has their support in tow. This is just Nebula getting denied once again. As now, Gorny continues to be proactive. They have actually been so far accelerated where they would normally only have the Sheen or the Tiamat. They have both. So their ability to clear is insane right now. This Trundle is a very, very fast clearer once they pick up these items, which, you know, normally should have been a little bit later than now.
Certainly should have. I mean, Tiamat Sheen is you're going to rampage through jungle camps with that. I mean, the extra AoE, then the AD from the Chomp with the Sheen. Yeah, you're clearing so fast, and you can see that in the CSD. But Nebula here, Toby having to flash away lest be rooted and killed.
And that's why I said I like the idea. Oh, hold on a minute. Okay, just a poke, just a poke. This is the reason I like the phase rush on the Victor, is because that is going to happen to you all the time. So being able to run away from the LeBlanc chains and try and build as much distance between you and the Jarvan as possible is going to be essential. Buddy has the flash, will likely be forced to use it here.
Yeah, there it is. That traffic cone really telling Sam that you're not allowed to drift around here at all. Really nice little skin choice from Gorny this game.
Hold on a minute, bot lane being dived. No way.
Well, you are behind the tier 1 tower as your bot side at level 5 and 6 winning in the 2v2. Nebula still here to try and get the response. Shielding Pakeko and Metis out of nowhere coming alive.
Oh, it's a triple kill for the Karma. They're going to be accelerated to Mythic. This is absolute disaster territory for Pessigod. So nicely played by 0-2, understanding they're in the front foot and they do not take one off the pedal.
Wow. I mean, you pan over to bot lane immediately, and suddenly I start seeing Jin firing off shots beyond the tower. I mean, nothing but impressive are the words I have to say about that one. Right now, looking at a 4,500 lead for 0-2 at 9 minutes. Pessigod with a very aggressive composition. Gonna be very hard to recover from that.
And the worst part about this is I can't criticize what Nebula's been doing of just walking to lane, try and gank, walking to lane, try and gank. A, it's Jarvan's prerogative, and B, if you don't do it, the Trundle will just out-farm you to oblivion, which he's doing. Bot lane, about to die to Gorny.
Oh, not again. I mean, you can't help but feel like they're just trying to greed because it's their only hope. But in the end, Pexcalo and Sirius both going to go down for their sins.
Not able to get anything done as Toyboot once again avoids any aggression, so cleanly played by the mid laner. Right now, quietly carrying as Buddy made their way all the way down here to try and contest and is forced to TP back to lane.
They're really playing on the edge right now, gonna get caught by the Cataclysm. Brings down the gravity field, might allow Gorny to secure a kill into Nebula, but no, at the moment, looks like, yeah, no, you can try and go for it.
Thinking, got him.
There it is, there's the flash forward, you have too much damage as the Trundle right now. It was matched well by 0-2.
The disgusting stat check ability that Gorny has, they're playing very well, don't get me wrong, but they could be playing awfully and still be able to eat up the enemy team just because of how accelerated they are now.
That is... Okay, look, chat, we're at almost 11 minutes. This Trundle has 74 farm, which is more than the enemy mid lane, and this is jungle farm, with 5 kills and assist.
Oh god.
Also, this Jin is doing an immense amount of damage, and that's Nami dead.
I don't think you win this Nebula, even with help.
No, this Trundle is literally going to run at your face and chomp at you successively, and you will fall. Because at this point, I really don't think there is any coming back.
Tend to agree. The only way you can even hope for a comeback here for Pessigod would be both the shutdown of Trundle and Karma getting fed into the same person, and it would have to be either Matsu or Piscolo. Because the one thing that you can say about your comp is you're very slippery, at least between those two members, the key members. You just haven't really had an opportunity to show it, and I feel like this is just going to be a testament to not taking early game skirmishes for Pessigod.
Red team's turret has been destroyed.
Yeah. The idea was there, and maybe you can try and get something on Gatsu to attempt to get some gold back into your pocket. Pagorni is here to match the play, so if you decide to overextend, you will lose. And there is no possibility about it, you will, because this Trundle is far too strong right now. Just gonna run at Buddy and Nebula. Maybe I cited the Death Warrant too early, because instead, Gordy ends up being the one to lose.
Come on and slam Nebula, trying to find some life back in this game as they're going to be able to push into this tower, get some plates, and, you know, while it's not the biggest thing in the world, anything matters at this point. Any amount of gold you could get back down is important, because as soon as it turns to 14 minutes, I would put a fair wager that the bounties are going to toggle on, and it will be time for Pessigod to start trying to collect on them.
Well, stat check Mr. Trundle there wasn't quite as stat checky as it might have seemed. And this just goes to show that at the end of the day, it is based on whether 0-2 end up making the plays that might lose them the game. Because the onus is kind of on 0-2 to say, okay, we just need to play safe and kind of let our team win eventually. But if you make plays like these, you're going to give Pessigod openings.
And quietly, the people that have the gold, okay, well, it's what we said happens. You want to give your money over. Ooh. Okay, alright.
Yeah, right.
Forcing out some summoners, not great. You're still in a heavily disadvantaged spot, but the people with money for 0-2 are Trundle and Karma. These two do not end the game for you, right? They do a good job of facilitating the rest of your team, but they will not win you the game, no matter how much gold you put on them. Gorny looking to change that.
Alright, this time a little bit easier because these two are squishy and you have every single ultimate in your arsenal to get the win. Their free ult spurned for that one. But,
don't do it, Nebula. He just wants to smite away the Krugs. They want some camps in their own jungle, but they're not allowed. As they're being invaded by Toibu, just trying to zone them off at this point. The Victor and the Gangplank providing excellent reserves for the early game established by Gorny. I have to say that the comp and the execution so far from 0-2 has been pretty good overall.
Yeah, I would say so. Maybe we can chalk up the Trundle Gangplank issue in the top side to maybe limit testing a little bit too hard, because right now we're looking at a 9,000 gold, 8,000, 9,000 gold advantage at 15. Turrets down in the top side, Jin Karma absolutely unleashed right now, and Gangplank very happy to just continue farming.
I am more than ready to talk about overconfidence in a series. That's the thing. Pesigod came in, they didn't have time to warm up because they got the bye initially. So last game was their first of the day. This is their second one now. They still have a chance in it. I know that it's pretty dire. There's a 10k gold deficit, but bounties have proved to me one thing, that any game, regardless of how lost it should be, is winnable if the enemy team gets a bit too overconfident.
Right then. As you're looking for something here, they need every single penny they can get in their treasury to keep themselves alive. Cataclysm onto Gatsu. Zion here with the follow-up, but this Gangplank is doing so much damage to Nebula. Able to get the kill, but it was quite close.
All your money is on Trundle and Karma. They're super fed. That's great.
Oh, this is way too risky.
This
I'm
isn't
not
great.
sure about 1v5ing. You might be the ahead, but I don't think you're that ahead.
Dragon is up in 8. I think Gorny will still be able to walk in and take it if they want to. They have the flash to get out after the fact. And as long as Toibu comes to the river, they will provide a lot of zoning potential. Even with a person disadvantage, this is still going to be a freebie for 0-2. Time to find out what soul they're going to be playing for.
Alright, and Lottery says a Hextech soul.
Oh, it couldn't have been worse, honestly. It couldn't have been worse. Actually, no, I tell you what. Mountain would have been worse because you have two very bursty champions, but Hextech is still pretty damn bad to play against.
Yeah, not ideal, especially when you have those two Drakes already, so the stacking is made much easier. And given that you have the structural advantage, that mid lane tower is taken alongside the bot one, this means the spot side jungle is incredibly precarious to step into.
Gorny and Metis, I feel like he may be overextended, though.
And a barrage curtain call there to provide the support. Trundle, the one-man army right now. Nope. That's it.
Yeah, overextended. Good joke, me. Forgot they had Gatsu on this Gangplank, who really doesn't need to do much beyond throw out those ultimates, and the fact they have the Collector paired with Pakeko means you really aren't allowed to exist on the same screen as either of them.
Might not have the Collector, but Piscolo was certainly collected right there. Gorny taking a few tower shots, able to escape with the extra move speed, and Gatsu gets the bonk in the back of the head for that one.
Crispy clean, you look along the rest of the map, and the lanes are all being pushed in. This is 0-2. Faltering a little bit to end out cleanly, but they are definitely looking for the win regardless.
Still pushing for more. Gatsu actually doing a solid amount of damage. TP in to try and support the play. Really, really aggressive. Pakeko, where are you right now?
Doing his best Fang impression on the flank there with the Jin wasn't as effective when you're doing it in melee range.
Alright. Well, if we do another gold checkup right now, it is 11,000.
I don't know why you would do that. That's just cruel. We already know that it's a utter stomping in the gold. The main thing is, though, where the gold is. And the fact that Metis is a piggy bank walking around the rift. Because you still have LeBlanc on the enemy team. You still have Lucian, who has the Nami in support. So there is the potential to just collect on that and start pushing towards their second items, which are going to be important when you look across the board and see two people, Gatsu and Pakeko, already at 2 items. Toibu, an item and a stopwatch in tow, and Gorny sat on a lot of money. What is he doing now?
Attempted to kill Nebula. That's the answer, and Toibu will get that one with the Chaos Storm. Tidal Wave in response, alongside the Cannon Barrage, going to do a lot of damage to Sirius. Might even die, forced to flash out the radius of that. Staying alive for now.
Orny is playing this Trundle like they're a fly on the wall and they will not leave you alone. Every time you sit down to focus, you're trying to write your essay, and then the fly just lands on the keyboard. And he's just buzzing around, this Trundle being an absolute nuisance to the enemy team, and will not stop. Buddy, currently trying to do something on the bottom lane. If they could get this kill, then they might be able to push him for a bounty tower, but that's as silver as the linings get here.
0-2 really forcing every play they can with their wallets right now. It's not a terrible idea. Pesigod very much on the back foot. Gatsu with that crit barrel annihilating Buddy in the bot side. And I think Pesigod's only hope is maybe something like a Baron flip.
I don't think we'll get there, if I'm going to be honest with you. There'll be a Baron, but I don't know if there'll be the opportunity for a flip. So the next dragon is up in a minute. And this is going to be a matter of how cleanly can 0-2 end the game. Because something I'm looking at, actually, is with the exception of that stopwatch, no defensive itemization across the board, meaning that Pesigod still have windows. I hate to keep saying it because it feels like I'm building up false hope. But it really does exist. You have the tools to punish a very overconfident and aggressive team, as now Trundle flanking with the Hex Gates coming in.
They have the slows from the Jhin going onto Toibu as the counter engage, but Gorny in the backline just doing so much damage. They will probably get one. Toibu will likely go down, but they got the shielding, and the Moonstone is just too much. Gorny now going onto Matsu. That's 4 kills and none for Pesigod.
Gonna keep just walking it down mid, escort the minion wave in. Mid inhib is open. Ready for the taking, but with respawns coming up, I don't think this will be the end of the game. It will likely just be using that bottom Hex Gate to rotate to the dragon, get the freebie, accelerate yourself even further, and be pleased. Ooh, this is dangerous.
Difficulties operating mechanism right there, Matsu. Alright, yeah, a little bit of a faulty portal.
It's alright, they managed to get through it, didn't matter, as the dragon will eventually be secured. Going to be picked up right now, denying once again another bounty over to Pesigod, as this is just going to be a further pushing out the gold lead. And please, just buy a defensive item. Like, everybody buy a stopwatch. That's all I want from you, 0-2, because that way you can't flip it, even if you try to.
Stopwatches are one of those greatest, like, you know, immediate defensive power spikes, or even offensively, to be able to have that one-time stasis. And even buying potions and elixirs in this situation might be what you need, because if you lose this next fight, it's lights out.
Gecko.
It's gonna be lights out for Pekko anyway, but that's great for Pesigod because it's what they wanted. But Gatsu, that's bringing back memories for some people, I'm sure. Chaos Storm on to the rest of the team. Matsu next to go down. Gatsu on to the rest of the team of Pesigod. 4 dead, 1 still remaining.
Oh my
Buddy.
Goodness. That's it. That's got to be the end of the game. Buddy's the only person going back. They're going to be the only person to defend, but there may not be a base left to defend. We're going to need a miracle play from this Sion, or that will be it.
Oh, Buddy, it's all on you right now. Can you put up the necessary defense? Gorny even doing the fail-safe Baron as a backup strategy in case all else fails. Gatsu just about channeling the Hexgate. Buddy wants it, though.
They're chasing in. They need to get something. You are not losing the Baron anymore, but it is gone. That is it. Alright. Well, I will say, 0-2, that was possibly the least optimal way you could play that. Sending one person to try and solo Baron. I think they're just having a bit of fun with it at this point, and rightfully so when you're this far ahead.
At the end of the day, for a lot of these players, as we've mentioned once before, is that it is a lot of fun to be able to play with mates at the end of the day in a competitive environment on the European stage in university format. It's a lot of fun, it's also a big challenge, but when you can have fun like this, you might as well take the opportunity.
And it is amazing for the mental. Having a game like this just puts 0-2 in such a confident spot coming into tomorrow, and any team that is going to be facing off against them is going to be sweating.
Absolutely sweating indeed, and as Pesigod are also sweating in this situation, so they're going to have to go through that lower bracket where Sweat and Tears are certainly missed all the competition. 0-2 locking themselves into the next stage of the upper bracket with this win.
Gonna be a slow, painful fountain dive. Hitting them with their wallets. Because eventually... Nah, they're gonna try and kill Sirius first, aren't they? They're definitely gonna try and kill this fish first.
I think the minions are going to end a little bit too early. There it is. Absolute dominance from 0-2, and maybe a favourite trying to secure one of those 4 seeds to get their vengeance in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, we understand why 0-2 managed to earn their way into the groups initially, and why they managed to earn their way here as well to the last chance qualifier, and they are most definitely taking that last chance in stride. 2 quick 2-0 victories for the team. Very cleanly executed from them across the board. And I have to say, not only a big confidence builder for 0-2, but also just putting them on that front foot, meaning they have got 2 more wins to make, and they're there. And they still have an extra life. They still have 1 loss that they could go for. Commiserations over to Yutaru Pesigod, who dropped down into the losers bracket. We saw life from them in the first game, but in this one, they really never got a chance to play.
And you can't help but think that it was partially that early game skirmish in the river. We do have some replays from the game, maybe reliving some of that. A lot of dominance from 0-2, but yeah. If Pesigod managed to get a slight advantage in that river skirmish...
It's over. The game ends the same way the other way. It's honestly just such a dramatic series of back and forths as... Once we're ready to see the replays, I hope we have that initial skirmish, but simultaneously I don't, because... It's just a little bit too sad to watch, as, let's see. Oh, good, it is the level 1. Yep, okay. So, this was just the rotate. Exactly, the stats on this Trundle are absurd, and every time they get a kill, the immense healing that comes through from the Trundle passive just keeps them alive. They are level 4 to the 2 level 2s of the bottom lane for Pesigod. There's just no way to contest this stat. Nebula tries to go for the knock-up here, because they understand they're going to get chased down one way or the other, but... Even with your bot lane converging, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's just really sad. The numbers weren't there, and the early game Trundle was just a little bit too much. This was a really nice follow-up with the rest of the team using their advantages, and then Gorney just absolutely demolishing the backline as Pesigod go forward here. Just, there was no hope in this fight.
Shockingly, I'm going to say that Gorney was the MVP of the game and series for this one, showing immense productivity on the Diana last game, and the same thing on the Trundle. They got the early lead, and they never gave a chance to the enemy team. That one little whoopsie toppler. Yeah, the barrel was nutty. Absolutely broken.
I mean, seeing 1,175 crit number is just... very, very, very juicy as the GP player, but on the receiving end, not so much.
Yeah, sub-groovy is what we call that one, as... I'm not even going to look at this one, right? It's the end of the game. We don't need to see that again. It was an elongated victory lap for 0-2. A rightful victory lap after a game like that. Admittedly, they were given the lead off of that early skirmish, and, well, they didn't throw, which is good, because in a best-of series, that's the one thing that matters. If you're not throwing games, then you're likely to win just on the odds of it.
Sometimes it's just about not throwing, rather than necessarily winning more. At the end of the day, I mean, with that game, if 0-2 decided to just sit back, it would probably have been the same outcome, albeit maybe less rapid. But recognition of the draft was good there. Pesigod maybe going a little bit too ham, and this is the result we have.
So overall, what does that end up meaning for us on the day? We know that we have got Pesigod heading into the losers bracket. They need to win the rest of their remaining series tomorrow if they are to make their way up and onwards into the group stage. We'll keep you posted on the playoff stage, sorry. We'll keep you posted on everybody's progress, because there will obviously be another stream tomorrow. We can't just leave you on the cliffhanger of what 0-2 going to do next, because we have got a lot more rosters, and I think almost better, some new ones as well. We've got some fresh blood coming in.
Yeah, absolutely fresh faces in the next stream for tomorrow. Of course, there will be Carlsberg Catchcat and Black Boxer ready to watch those, and necessarily who ends up taking those last few places in the qualifying matches. So, huge,
take a look.
Huge information there.
Who's actually going to be fighting for it? Who have we got left as we see updated standings across the board? We know 0-2 have moved on, meaning that we have got in the lower bracket guaranteed. Let's look to the top side up there. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't remember every team's names just by the 3-word symbol, but we can see that across the board we have got quite the spread. I know for a fact that at least half of those are new teams, so that is good to see.
If I remember correctly,
Oh,
I
go
am
on.
confident that AGH was a team that was in, I think, Group C or D. And then I'm not sure about the rest of them. I'm confident that the German and Belgian seeds are new, but for Lithuania, maybe that's a continuing team. I will check that now. But for the most part, at least two fresh faces on that side of the bracket.
Which is good, because it means that we could be heading in to tomorrow's games with the potential for a new team qualifying into the playoffs from these last chance quals, which is exactly what the name is for. We have it there for a reason. This is the last opportunity to make it into those playoffs and try and reach for that insane prize pool we have up for offer for the tournament. Something that I know for a fact Kit's definitely got their eyes peeled on.
Alright, so I can in fact confirm that K2U was also in the group phase for beforehand. So yes, two groups that are new in terms of Germany and Belgium, but the Lithuanian and Polish seeds, both of which were in the group stage.
Okie dokie. So, question is going to be, as we take a look back down onto the bottom side, will we be seeing another game from BME tomorrow? As I would kind of debate on their former series that they're having a clean series, as it was a heavily back and forth game we got to see between them and DMU. I believe it was like 40 minutes it went on for. Utter slog of a game. Yeah. So now we get to see if we get a rematch once that series ends, because BME did play against 0-2 in their own group in the first phase, so we get all the levels of narrative coming into tomorrow if that's the case.
I mean, that would be a huge vengeance match for either team, to be perfectly honest, because they did go 1-1, and when you're contesting one of the spots to get back in the tournament to get more vengeance onto the rest of the teams that beat you, then certainly a match to watch potentially.
So my main takeaways for the day before we go ahead and finish up is that 0-2 looking like a different animal coming in here, and I'm very excited to see if they can keep this form up, because obviously the second game they played well, right? We'll just cut it there. But the first game, I'm very confident in watching how proactive they were, how well they executed, that even if you ban away their best champions, ban away Gorney's Zac, which has been the case every game so far, it doesn't matter, right? This team has options and they have a lot of different playing styles. We saw from the mid lane, Toibu play a great Yasuo game where they were winning what should be a winning matchup the whole way through. And then this time around, they survived on the Victor, and spoiler, that's all you need to do. You just survive on Victor, and eventually the game goes in your favour one way or the other.
Yeah, although admittedly the Trundle was a bit of a force of nature
helped.
if we take a look at that. But regardless, we can see, at least as well from today, that the general power level of the teams within the entire bracket is strong. We got a good level competition going into this last chance qualifier, which means that we're going to have a great level competition going into playoffs next week as well.
That's exactly what we want to hear, because as far as the drafts and all those kind of things go, I don't think we've got anything solidified of what our meta is going to be relative to MSI, but I can see already that these teams have got their identities and they're happy to keep pushing them.
Alright then, well, that should be it from us, unless you have anything else to say, Melvin Izzle. But a big thank you to the production and all the admin staff behind the works of it to be able to put on this production. And don't go anywhere tomorrow, because there's a great series of matches to be played.